like him so much in that show because he's got people to distract from his over
Yeah,
the
that's fair.
topness.
That's fair. He's the main character, but he is not the only character by any stretch.
Right.
Oh,
But
I
like
just-
a Will
I just
Ferrell
realized
movie,
we're
it's just him
live.
the whole time. If Sandberg was on screen the entire time, I think it would be rough.
R.I.P. to the captain from that show.
Yes, we should
Yeah.
all be. We should all be wearing sunglasses for his funeral.
Yeah. Oh, hey everyone, we are live, aren't we?
Yeah,
Sorry
we are.
to keep the 300 people waiting. Platoon. I mean, Dark Hour. It was all your fault.
It wasn't even. Fine. I guess you know what I'm supposed to be. I'm HR now. I'm here to protect the company, and it was my fault. And everyone should come to my channel and start saying things bad in my comments, and that way I get engagement for all the hate. There you go.
That's right.
Hi everybody, welcome to BSUP episode 44. I almost said 43, but I looked up and saw the tab first before I made my mistake. That would have been 2 out of 3 weeks in a row. But yeah, episode 44. I am your host, Movie Cynic. Little Platoon is the other host, and then Dark Hour is our producer. And we also have some guests today. Returning to BSUP is Zax. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Happy to be here. We had a great show backstage.
Yes, we did. We basically had the first half hour of BSUP backstage while we waited.
Don't make me pull up the damn Shia LaBeouf pick again.
It's members only, but members only for like panel members only, which is
literally
it's like the most exclusive club you can possibly join.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And Greg Owen making his return to the show as well. How are you?
Hi everybody. Sorry, I can only read when I lift my glasses.
Yeah, I know.
I want to be cool with you guys, but then also I don't have my prescriptions. So, all right, we're good.
I appreciate the effort. And Random Film Talk also returning to BSUP. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty okay. Nearly made it through Rings of Power, and no doubt we'll get through a bit more of that sort of now. Everyone can share in our pain.
Oh yeah. That's what most of the reviews are for, I think, from people, because I think less people are watching the actual show than watching all the reviews online. So that's how they get through the pain. But
what are the reviews even doing for this? Because like my impression, I haven't seen that many because I just haven't physically had the time in the day to watch them. But my sort of impression is that even reviews for Rings of Power season 2 are not quite as like hot as Rings of Power season 1 videos were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, but they're still
video
doing well.
Better than anything on my channel ever. But there has been there was a distinct drop off on the third video.
Yeah, in the case of my videos, that's definitely not the case. But I feel like my channel is probably an anomaly because it was birthed out of season 1 of Rings of Power, so season 2 was always going to do well, I think. So,
good.
Yeah, my videos, regardless, just do kind of like a baseline, and they're above the baseline, so I consider them doing well, but not nearly like season 1. Like, I think I had 1 million views on my first Rings of Power video in season 1. That's not the case here by any stretch. So, but there's still interest in it. I think if you have something, I don't know, something to riff on or something interesting to say about it, they're holding strong.
Is plenty to riff on.
Then I think you'll do just fine, sir.
I think it's quite a good topic, even for people who just do not give two shits about Rings of Power. I mean, no one really cares about Rings of Power anyway. I'm pretty convinced everyone who does is a bot. But like people who like the Lord of the Rings and who like the Peter Jackson movies, that's quite a large number of people. And quite a lot of those are going to be pretty curious to see what happens in Rings of Power without watching Rings of Power. So I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, and if everyone's also wondering why we're all wearing sunglasses, it's because we're hosting 2 funerals today. And that is for Rings of Power and the Joker. So what are we starting off with here, Dark Hour? I forget.
I think we determined that we would start off with Rings of Power.
Yes.
And this horribly impractical way of trapping someone's sword.
That is impractical.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I think that was what we determined because more people on the panel had seen that.
I know, surprising, but I mean, there's lots to talk about with the show, not just the finale, but also kind of the trajectory and where this is going to go. Oh my God, sorry, someone's calling me at the same time. But yeah, could I get the panel's thoughts on the latest episode of this travesty? who wants to start? I don't remember who hadn't
I
seen
think
it.
everybody on the panel has seen it.
I haven't. I'm sorry, guys. I did watch Joker and I watched Agatha, and I didn't have time or patience, honestly, to keep on bringing side.
Okay.
Something had to give, and it was going to be that one. I'm still
right on.
I watched season 4. We can talk about 1, 2, 3, or 4 if you guys want. I'm there. Otherwise,
You mean episode 4?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you're like living in year 2035 if you saw season 4 already.
I'm living in an alternate timeline where they make season 4 because there's no chance of that happening.
Oh no, yeah, that's I don't think
maybe.
I think that they're gonna make it to end of season 3 and then do like 2 short, like basically 2 movies that count as the new seasons, but they're gonna be really cheap and dumped onto the service.
The last 2 episodes of this series were as long as a short movie, and if it was a movie, you would have walked out. And it's so bad that now, of course, they had to get Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, they rolled him out again this year at the end to say there's actually no such thing as canon in Tolkien's work. It really
he doesn't have like a
ballsy.
Yeah, he doesn't have like in the Silmarillion. He doesn't have an entire letter he penned to several of his friends that tell you exactly what counts as lore and canon. That doesn't exist.
I mean, and that guy's desperate because his videos are not doing very well, and no one cares about his channel anyways. The few that do watch it, I tried to watch some of his stuff just to I was going to riff on it, but it's too boring. Like his videos are too boring to riff on. So, so that's that they have to run that defense. But I'm surprised they didn't start earlier in the season with the defense. I think they really believed that because there was fighting in 7 and 8, that those were going to somehow fix everything because we like bang bang / action, which they weren't the worst to watch unless you know what you're looking at, and then it's so much worse when you imagine. Like, not only was that none of this stuff is related to Tolkien at all, and even the way that the armies fought is a complete embarrassment to anyone who knows anything about medieval warfare or that style. And they've also sucked all the magic out of Middle Earth. It's not there. Galadriel. I mean, he was already horrible, but I think this season they kind of they should have just got rid of her at the beginning, but they overcorrected by having her suck even more, thinking that we will now sympathize with her because she's struggling, but she struggles, but she is personally immune to caring about the struggling. So there's no sympathy there. She just sucks. And she makes all the wrong decisions. And you see her standing next to these other guys when she's in armor and they're in armor, and she's so tiny as opposed to the 6'4" Galadriel she's supposed to be, and she's small and weak, but yet she can go toe to toe with Sauron for a little bit. And Charlie Vickers, I think, is the best thing on the show as Sauron. I think he does an okay job. It's not my pick for Sauron, but he's a decent actor. I think he's trying hard. That's kind of my last 2 episode take. But all of the stuff, specifically speaking, with the combat was horrible to watch. Embarrassing, except for the extras were funny. Watch the extras in the background. They're hilarious.
Yeah, like I was kind of expecting from season 2, going from the trailer, that it was going to be bad, but that it was going to be potentially more entertaining than season 1. I don't think that turned out to be the case at all, because I was like expecting that there was going to be a lot more action. I think the producers actually said, we're just going to pull the ripcord and like have action, and there's going to be a lot more stuff happening. Whereas we needed to set everything up and take it pretty slow in season 1. Turns out that's not really the case at all. We've got 1 episode, which is a battle, which we also had in season 1. Apart from that, you've got a fight scene in episode 8. You've got a fight scene in episode 4. That's pretty much it in terms of like action. And if the action was decent, then it's like, okay, well, we can finally actually watch something that is superficially entertaining. But like you say, the action sequences are just dumb after dumb after dumb. But yeah, like with Halbrand or Sauron, I guess, Anatar, whatever we want to call him, Charlie Vickers is definitely one of the few people where you can tell that he is definitely trying. I would add to that list Charles Edwards, I think is the guy's name, who plays Celebrimbor. Mm-hmm. Personally, I found him to be the best performance in season 2. Bear McCreary, I think, was trying some interesting stuff with the music. Apart from that, like the guy that plays Durin, like that's really it for people where you can really tell that they were trying to do something special.
It's
Because
so
there's just not
difficult
anything
to
else.
even compliment the actor who plays Celebrimbor because I actually really like I can appreciate his performance, but he's the most easily mockable character throughout this entire show because he's just a fucking moron.
Yes.
And awful
So-
casting, horrifically miscast.
Really, I like the guy. I think it's such a duality here because the performance is really nice, but I make fun of him more than any character in all of my scripts.
Oh, no,
It's the same as Durin, King Durin in season 1. I think he was probably the best actor in season 1. And I mean, arguably season 2, but in season 2, he's just such a non-character. He's basically similar to Celebrimbor. So it's like you've got this, I think, really talented actor reading complete horse shit and making you want to care about it, but you can't because they're just hamstrung by the quality of the writing.
Yeah, and even if the action is any good anyway, if there was more of it, I don't like or care about any of these characters. So it's just it's the most superficial way to enjoy a show is just the pretty visuals. And I mean, throughout the series, it does look nice the majority of the time, but the action sequences, which are few and far between, just have no emotional weight to them at all.
That's because they haven't done any of the basic groundwork to justify the action sequences. The idea that you can drum up loads more interest as long as more flashy stuff happens on screen is such superficiality. It's like if you don't know who the people involved in the fight scenes are, then the fact the fight scenes make no sense of themselves isn't going to help matters either. But you don't care about what happens. When what's her name, X-ray girl elf, when she gets like
X-ray girl elf.
and like she gets like randomly shot from all directions with arrows, and the only place the arrows can possibly have come from is other elves who presumably know that there can't be any diverse elves in the later timeline, so they're just killing off the foreign ones.
That's what they're doing.
She dies and she gets the hero moment, and I still don't know what her name is. I can't tell you what her name is. I'm sure, because we spent randomly like 9 hours on EFAP on Saturday when I'm sure the name was mentioned, and I have already forgotten who she is.
I don't think it was actually mentioned on the stream because I know the character's name, but that's because I've checked the credits on IMDb. I'm pretty certain that character's name is not ever spoken in the show. And if it is, it's
quite so bad. But like she has the hero moments that one arrow from you can turn the tide. Who the fuck are you? I don't know who you are. Why are we giving you a hero moment? Why should I like feel any sense of tension when they suddenly and randomly wheel Galadriel out in a cage in front of a horse charge to stop it? I don't like her. I don't care if she dies. I quite like it if she died. I know she's not going to either. So if you have no characters, why should we care about your fight scenes? If your fight scenes additionally make no sense because the people in charge of them don't know how to orchestrate a fight scene, then I'm just going to laugh at it. If you cut away to orcs ladling gravy for some fucking reason, I'm going to laugh at it.
Like the setup to the battle is also just complete nonsense because like I guess naively, I don't know if it was the same with you guys, but I was naively expecting that they were going to explain how Adar knows that Halbrand and Sauron are the same person, how he knows that he's in Eregion, which would then justify maybe why he wants to attack Eregion. They don't justify that at all. I think we're expected to believe that Sauron wanted it to happen, but the way that he made that happen, Adar just guesses that Halbrand and Sauron are the same person. He guesses, turns out that he's correct, and then he attacks the city. Which means the entire setup for the battle, like again, compare it to Helm's Deep. The setup for that battle is thoroughly explained,
Right.
and it happening at the end of the film makes complete sense, and you totally understand everything that's going on. Whereas with the climactic battle of season 2 of Rings of Power, it happens because the villain guessed something, turned out to be right, was able to confirm what they guessed randomly by chance, and the main villain Sauron wanting it to happen makes no sense anyway. Because he's just imposing a time limit on himself for no reason.
Well, what he did too was he wanted that army to come in to put pressure on Celebrimbor to finish the rings, but like his whole plan almost should have ruined his plan because he was already making the rings at the time. So to add an army to come in and invade Eregion doesn't make any sense because you don't need pressure for Celebrimbor, and in fact, that's what caused him to realize there was an illusion in the first place and then try to book it out of there and cut his thumb off, which I'm not sure if that's supposed to be like a callback to cutting Sauron's finger off with the ring, but I think a lot of stuff in here is set up that way.
It could be. I don't know. I just read that as just abject incompetence. Like they want, like the master smith of the elves is in his own workshop, surrounded by his own tools, and he uses a device that is there to cut metal to instead cut his thumb off rather than the cuffs that are holding him in place, because he's an idiot. He's just a moron. Everyone's an idiot. They're all really stupid. I don't care about stupid people. I think they should all die. And they kind of bring it all the way through. Like you go the weird, like, narrative decisions that you have. The entire thing with Celebrimbor toward the end of the episode is he's so desperately trying to escape the confines of his tower, and it's bad when he's sent back there because they all assume he's mad. And then he tries to escape, and then he gets surrounded by guards, and they don't believe him, and it's, oh no, he's going to be sent back. Galadriel comes and says, how dare you? Well, first of all, I found my way here through some magical, like, secret dwarven tunnels that the guy who built the city doesn't know about, and apparently the dwarves, fuck it, I don't even know. And then she's like, well, no, Celebrimbor's your master. And then Celebrimbor says, yes, thank you for believing me. Now I'm going to go back into the tower that I've been trying to escape the entire time to confront Sauron, even though I have no thumb. And I'm going to take some guards who we've already been shown are under his control anyway, because that will definitely work. And then lo and behold, it doesn't work because Sauron has magically got telekinetic control over half the people of Eregion when it matters. And I'm just sitting there wondering, like, why has any of this happened? This is just so incompetent.
They really do seem, especially in Rings of Power Season 2, to have started with whatever the payoff is that they want to have, and then just jumped back by like one scene and not filled in the blanks. So like the example there with the thumb, that would be somewhat justifiable if they had shown him putting, attempting to cut the handcuffs first, and then it doesn't work. And the writers are just like, well, I mean, it wouldn't work, so we're not even going to have him try, which saves time. But the problem, like you say, is that it means that Celebrimbor is shown to be an idiot. So I guess they would consider it more efficient. But the problem is that every time they do it, they damage the characters.
And what they do with him too is, by the casting, I wasn't saying he was a bad actor. I'm saying that, Celebrimbor is supposed to be 6'10", long black hair, and he's an uber chat. He's this grandson of High King Feanor. And what his motivation was to make something on the level of what his grandfather made with the Silmarils. He wanted to make these rings. He didn't need someone to force him to do it. That is part of his ego. And so you get a 6'10" guy who looks like that, and it's a different aesthetic with Sauron. But this guy was like out of the Golden Girls, and he looks a bit like B. Arthur, and so of course he's subservient. He's immediately subservient, and that completely breaks the character already. And so I think casting matters. Good actor. He had a great performance, but he wasn't Celebrimbor.
I actually didn't know that Feanor was related to Celebrimbor, because Rings of Power has not told us.
Right. Yeah, of course not.
I think doesn't he mention
may not
it,
know.
I think once in season 1, because he's got Feanor's hammer. It's, I think, like season 1 episode.
It's episode 2,
is it? I think
he has the hammer, and he says that it was the hammer that Feanor used to make the Silmarils, and that he wants to make something even better than that. But the suggestion that they're related is not that's not ever mentioned.
Oh, and it's also because Feanor isn't really set up in the show either. It's the kind of thing that, and Rings of Power does this quite a lot. Whenever people say that it breaks canon, and its defenders, what precious few of them are, will say no, because they mentioned the name of a guy. But that's not, like, you have to be familiar with the canon the show is breaking in order for that name to mean anything, because the show will refuse to do any of that work itself. There's only 1 or 2 exceptions to this rule, and they are invariably even the strongest scenes in pretty much the entire show. So you have Elrond in season 1 explaining his relationship with his father, and that's what the show actually borrows from the Lord directly and makes sure that it passes that in its own terms as well, in order to explain Elrond's thinking and to help him impart, say, some kind of moral or familial lesson to Durin. Like, that's a strong scene, because the show recognizes you can't just throw random disconnected names in and rely on your fans to say, oh, they said the thing, I remember the thing, back before it was completely retarded. So it's just, yeah, it's such a lazy show in so many ways. Like, how do you spend that much money on all of this, and you can't be fucked with the most basic level of writing work? It's staggering.
Like, they also focus in like really, really, really hard on things purely for the benefit of the audience. Like, the characters treat certain things in universe as being with a degree of reverence that, like, we might have because we're familiar with them, and the characters are not. So everyone knows that the rings for men are really important, even though they would not know that. The orcs just somehow know that they're important. We have that god awful scene where Muriel gives Narsil to Elendil. It's like, hey, this is Narsil, and then he takes it out exactly like Aragorn does in the Lord of the Rings. And
God.
what's happening in universe is it's like, here's a sword, go and reclaim your destiny. But to us, it's meant to actually mean something, and they're just relying entirely on us having seen it in something else. They do the same with the Shire. They did the same with Mithril in season 1. They did the same with the Eagle, where they just look an eagle, and you're just meant to not question what that means in universe, because what it means in universe, you can't possibly work it out based on what the show has actually told you.
And eagles can speak, so he could have said, "No, I don't want this guy. I want this girl." They don't just squawk. They're very intelligent creatures, but how they writing? So this is a writing issue. I'm not a writer. I don't have that background. You guys are better than I am, but they planned the last episode all on. They wanted Durin the Third to end with a big jumping at a Balrog scene, and they had that visual. Thought it'd be great, and so they built towards that visual, and that's what they wrote. And it's a cool shot, but everything leading up to it was retarded.
I was waiting for him to yell, "You shall not pass."
Oh God, yeah. Can you imagine? I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't do that. But they resisted that temptation. But even that, now we're talking about it, because I was sitting there before thinking, well, I might try and do slightly shorter scripts because I still have to review all of season 2, and we've done deep dives in EFAP. I don't want to have to go into it again. But now we're talking about it again, and every single scene is completely wrong. It's just going to end up being really, really long again. But like the Balrog thing, season 2, episode 8 begins with the Balrog waking up because King Durin battering rams his way into a mine, like a deeper part of the mine. Then the Balrog turns up, and then because the Balrog's there, he takes off the ring, which up until this point he's refused to take off, up to the point of he will kill his own people to keep hold of this ring. Yeah. Then the Balrog turns up and says, "Oh no, I'm going to take the ring off and say something nice to my son. Then I'll jump at the Balrog," which makes no sense. But after that, you're thinking, well, that's a little bit early to set up that the dwarves now know completely and definitively that the Balrog is down there and awake, because we've got the whole of the rest of this episode, and we're only in season 2, and they can't abandon Moria yet. So what's the Balrog going to be doing for the entirety of the rest of this run? You get to the end of season 2, episode 8. One of the final scenes is when they're doing like a post-mortem in Moria, talking about the problems they have to face before they're able to go and help the elves. And I'm thinking, well, there's a really big problem straight off the bat. You've got a Balrog living in your basement. That's quite a dangerous thing, and you should probably be looking to leave. They don't mention it. The problems are, the dwarf lords from other kingdoms paid tribute to your dad, and now they're a bit pissed off. Also, by the way, your brother, sorry we haven't mentioned him before, but he definitely exists. He's plotting to take your crown. Yeah. And the Balrog? What about the Balrog? Nope, we don't have time for that. It's we're going to do some knockoff, like midget version of House of the Dragon in season 3. That's what we need to set up. And they've never mentioned him before. Where did the brother thing come from? It's the same thing with Numenor as well, because Elendil, obviously, he's given Narsil by the queen. I don't know how she found it, because she's fucking blind. I guess she could smell it or whatever. She gives him Narsil. It's tremendously important. He leaves without her reasons. And he says, well, I'm just going to go to West Numenor, because, by the way, I have another son there called Anarion. He lives over in West Numenor. He can protect us. I'm thinking, well, that would have been helpful for you to mention when 2 episodes ago, your daughter was saying that the reason she betrayed her family is that you'd basically sacrificed the entire family. But evidently you haven't, because you just forgot to mention that her brother is still alive, living next door. So why does none of this get set up? There's no setup and no payoff. It's just they're running out of... Are they even running out of cast members? They're setting up cast members they want to be in season 3, and they just summoned them into the ether, and now we have to put up with them forevermore.
You just reminded me as well with the whole Numenor thing. Like, it basically could have all been resolved within 1 episode. I don't know why it wasn't. I mean, I do know why it wasn't, but anyway. And yeah, in this final episode, basically, like, Pharazôn summons all of the faithful, his political opponents, and he has learned somehow off screen that Muriel was apparently working with Sauron, which is obviously not true. And he uses that to, like, finally take over and to start properly getting rid of his political opponents. But we never have it explained to us how exactly he learned that. He just has this document that says Muriel's been working with Satan, I promise. And the conversation doesn't continue.
source. Trust me, bro.
Yeah, they
The
just
dwarves also have
inserted that.
the Watcher in the water to worry about too. The dwarves have that. Disa woke up the Watcher in the water. It appeared to be anyway. Which, unless they're saying it's a Balrog now, but they don't live underwater.
So from that scene, my take on it was always that it was the Balrog, but I mean, it could be the Watcher. As in, like, the vibrations that you see on the water was as a result of the Balrog roaring, was what I took from it. But it could absolutely be another mystery box where it's the Watcher. That's true.
Yeah, I had the same read because I looked at it and I thought, well, judging just by visual storytelling, you would assume, based on things you know from things that aren't Rings of Power, that is the Watcher in the water. But because it's never mentioned, it's never introduced, and the only thing we definitively know is down there is the Balrog, I assumed that it was just incompetent mise en scène. Like, they were trying to convey the Balrog is down moving somewhere and disturbing the water, even though that really should entail that a different creature is down there. But yeah.
Yeah, and like in the scene after that is when Durin goes and speaks to his dad and says, there's an ancient nameless evil, Disa heard it, or whatever it is, like, because he knows that that's how you have to describe whatever's down there.
She walked like 15 meters down a side alley and she came upon a demon. It's like, someone should do something about that. How has nobody discovered it before? She didn't have to go out of her way to find it.
Well, this is the thing, is it's just dumb upon dumb upon dumb, because if it was just some rando who wandered into that cave, then they wouldn't have found the Balrog. The only reason why it happens is because she has to do her stone singing thing to find her large spherical object. Because if she hadn't done that, then the Balrog wouldn't have heard her. If it was just someone walks in and, oh, there it is, then they'd leave. They wouldn't find it. So yeah, I really hate that sequence, possibly more than, well, maybe not more than any other, but it's up there for season 2 because Disa was one of the only characters that I think came out of season 1 where I had any interest in seeing what they were going to do next. And season 2, there isn't a character that I give any degree of a shit about at this point, because they ruined Glug. They ruined Glug. It wasn't even character assassination. It was inversion. They did the same thing with Adar, where they were just like, well, suddenly all of his values have flipped and we're not going to explain why, just deal with it. And then obviously full spoilers, but both of those characters are killed off almost immediately afterwards. Right after they just straight up decided that they were the opposite of who they actually were. So there is nothing that I am interested in seeing going into season 3, which wasn't actually the case for season 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when people were saying that season 2 is in some sense slightly an upgrade on season 1, I don't see it. I actually think season 2 is quite dramatically worse than season 1. Because at least season 1 has a few redeeming arcs. The dwarves generally, I thought, were quite strong in season 1. So, like, Disa is definitely one of them. Yeah. But I liked the father-son dynamic with the princes, with the Durins. There were some really strong scenes in there, and I liked where they could have taken that. And season 2 just burns them all. They get assassinated. Waldrig is probably dead, sadly. MVP of season 1, man who made Mordor. Hopefully he'll come back, but probably not. So he's gone. Glug, as you say, character inverted. There's nothing to look forward to. And they finish on that supposedly optimistic note of them all standing where Rivendell is almost certainly going to be made at some point. And you've got like Gil-galad, whose incompetence is largely to blame for them being here. Galadriel, who really should be executed for high treason, having ensured all of this happens by not telling anyone that the guy she brought into Eregion was Sauron. She's still not going to be punished for that. No one's mentioned it. Elrond, who just flips at some point off screen in his attitude toward the rings, he's now happy for them to be worn and used. And fucking Don Lemon, who's just there for some reason.
Oh yeah, we got to mention that. So Arondir, he gets run through with Adar's sword at the end of episode 7, and it's very clearly they're building it up as like, holy shit, is he dead? It's played as a big dramatic moment because it focuses on it. But then in episode 8, he's just totally fine doing backflips and roundhouse kicking the orcs, and he doesn't even have an injury. The writers just completely forgot, seemingly. It's not like I was expecting that he was going to get healed off screen by the ring, because it was not the way that you would usually kill off a character. But they just didn't even do that. He's just fine, and they don't explain how. And then a similar thing happens to Galadriel in episode 8. She falls off a fucking cliff. Like, when I say cliff, we're talking, I don't know, hundreds, like 200-300 feet. And she's fine. She's all right. She survived that. Trust us. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
That was one of my favorite scenes as well. Seeing her jump off a cliff. It's like, finally, a character gets what they deserve. But no, she fucking survives.
Just got that Captain America, Spider-Man.
No,
And
she's
her-
the. I mean, we already know she's got the plot armor, but no, I agree with you that I mean, I haven't watched any more of it because it was worse, and I had a lot of people tell me the same thing. When I covered the first 3 episodes, they're like, "Oh, you're such a whatever hater." All these words. It's not worse. It's better. Which, first of all, I just feel like first season was a 1 or a 2 out of 10. So to say it's better is kind of not qualified. It's it's like me saying that I won a race against a bunch of toddlers. Like, okay, I was faster, but what are we really saying here? But I also agree that it really was worse. Those people are lying to themselves because the first season we were going somewhere. At least we were developing characters, whatever. And then the second season began, and we already had these characters, and we didn't do anything with them. We just meandered around with, as you say, Celebrimbor is making the dumbest decisions possible. He's fooled, and the dwarf son is fooled by the dumbest plot imaginable by Sauron, and we didn't go anywhere. So to me, it was worse, not only because we tried to do this weird, like, sympathetic orc thing, but it was worse because now we've established the characters and we're not doing anything with them. So at least in season 1, I had something to distract me with. Season 2, there's nothing left at all. We're just boring and destroying people.
Yeah, like I think where that became particularly apparent is at the very, well, it becomes apparent before this, but probably the best example is the final duel between Galadriel and Sauron. I keep getting them mixed up. Because, yeah, they basically, those two characters haven't seen or spoken to each other since the end of season 1. And that whole conversation was basically where he was trying to tempt her to join him, and he was explaining that, like, her actions have caused him to return, and have basically, Sauron lives because of you, was the culminating line. And then they basically just retread that same ground again, almost 1 for 1. He's like, the door is still open to, I'll put a crown on your head if you want, kind of thing. And he's reminding her again that she planted the seeds that allowed Sauron to grow. It's the same exact conversation that they're having for the second time at the end of the series. And I'm guessing that the same thing will probably happen at the end of season 3. They'll have another fight, and he'll say, "Do you want to be my queen still?" And she'll be like, "No, even though you're hot, so I won't kill you." It's and
that feeds
forward
as well quite damagingly, because if the moment in Fellowship of the Ring when Galadriel is presented with the ring, and that's the moment when she is tempted with effectively ultimate power, and it's her ability to resist that which confirms to her that she has passed the test and she can actually return home. Like, the ban on her own personal interpretation of the ban has been lifted by her final refusal of ultimate power, and that's an incredibly dramatic moment, and it's a very characterful moment, and it gets more, like, the more you know about it from the lore, like the deeper that moment is. But if you read Rings of Power in continuity with that, it's no longer a special moment, because now twice in the space of 2 seasons, she has been tempted with ultimate power and she said no. And then she's been tempted with ultimate power and she said no. And I'm sure in season 3, she'll be tempted with ultimate power and she'll say no. Which means by the time you get to the moment in Fellowship of the Ring where the ring is in front of her, she says no. And it's just, well, fucking, we knew that about you already, because Sauron keeps personally inviting you to be his queen and you keep saying no. Stop, like, anticipating the most dramatic moment in her story by using it for your stupid season ending moment and just doing it again and again and again. It's tedious.
I'm just glad Glug wasn't Celeborn.
Glug being Celeborn. Well, the word there is that Adar might be Celeborn. And I don't think they've strictly ruled that out even now, because Celeborn does have to come back at some point. They can either have it that he's already in the world somewhere and either locked up or hidden, which neither of which make much sense. Or they can sort of do the. I don't think they have. They can do the Glorfindel approach from the lore. Glorfindel dies and is sent back because of his great heroism and his power. Like, elves can, in special circumstances, be sent back from Valinor.
Okay.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they wanted to bring Celeborn back, if Adar isn't out of the show forever, if he's now, because he has his redemptive moment in season 2, episode 8. when he becomes good and nice, whether that grants him entry and then they can send him back. Now, the only thing to work against that, which to be fair is quite a large thing that works against that, is that the writers themselves said they planned for Adar to die much earlier, but Simon Tolkien told them that for some reason he was a really important character and they should keep him around to die 5 minutes after he was originally supposed to. So it suggests that they don't think he is that important. But they do have to find some way of bringing Celeborn back at some point because he's supposed to be alive.
So they started doing what I thought was the whole thing with the name, because in season 1 they just waste so much time. Like, is he Gandalf? Is he not? Is he Sauron? Is he not?
God.
And then they started doing the same thing with Adar, like just before he's Julius Caesared by Glug. He says, like, when I was before I was Adar, I had a different name. And Galadriel's like, what was it? And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. It was a meaningless name because Adar is the name that I earned. And like that leads nowhere. So that is either just a complete waste of time, or they're potentially going to come up with an answer later down the line. I have no idea. But what I was kind of expecting at that point is Adar puts on Galadriel's ring, which has magical anti-evil properties, and then he becomes like silky smooth, and she wants to bang him, I guess. And I was kind of expecting that when he turns around, she absolutely is. It's a shame that all of the villains are so bangable. So yeah, when he turns around, have her be like, holy shit, it's Celeborn. Like, she then realizes, because he no longer has all the like evil corrupting goo all over his face. And then she realizes that actually, yes, this was her husband. But they don't do that. He just says, I used to have a different name, now I have another, and then he dies.
Which they could, I mean, again, I think they could. Yeah, they've done a name mystery in both seasons. They like repeating themselves. They have these particular devices, and they have to be present in every season. So you have an identity-based mystery, you have a MacGuffin-based quest, you have pointlessness with hobbits. So that's their trope, is just being completely redundant. And you have family drama with dwarves, and like all of that is just being repeated. And then you have, of course, the set piece exchange with Galadriel and Sauron at the end, which always has to happen. So if they do keep going on this paint by numbers approach to plot writing, then yes, season 3 or later, they could bring Adar back and they could do the name thing again, and it could turn out that he is Celeborn after all. And then you've got a really awkward conversation between him and Galadriel, because they used to be married, and she has to explain how she tried to posthumously cuck him with Satan. So that will be fun to see if they do try it.
And arguably Elrond as well. We actually haven't mentioned that. Have we?
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that.
So Galadriel gets captured, and then Elrond negotiates and realizes that, like, no, I'm not gonna make a deal with you, Adar. If you need to kill Galadriel, so be it. But I'd like to say goodbye to her if that's going to be the way of things. And he walks up to her and gives her a kiss, and as like a distraction while he hands her a lockpick, which shouldn't be a distraction because the orcs would not be distracted by a kiss, and they're looking right at her. But it's pretty distracting for the audience because you have this big emotional orchestral music, this swelling score that happens when this goes down on screen. It takes a little while. The kiss, it's not like a peck on the foot. It's not like a Frodo Sam kiss at the end where he
zooms in.
Yeah, it's very intimate, and it gives the impression, if you were to watch that scene with no context, that these two are very much in love, and that they are saying one last goodbye to each other. Galadriel and Elrond are not
the
in
music
love.
swells as well. Like everything about that scene makes it not seem like a ruse. It seems like a genuine thing.
Yes, and like I hate it because, I mean, for like lore reasons, I understand why the writers absolutely knew what they were doing, because she goes on to be he marries her daughter. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is like, that hasn't happened yet in Rings of Power, and to be honest, I don't hugely care. So if they were in a fully romantic relationship, it would be like, well, that's not faithful to Tolkien, but at the same time, I don't particularly care if that's the case. So had this not come out of nowhere, then I'd be like, okay, that scene kind of works. But they deliberately pulled it out of nowhere in order to just give people something to talk about and to distract us, the audience, from her giving him a lockpick, which is just an insane moment at the time. And like when it happened, I was expecting that they were doing an Austin Powers, that he was gonna give her a lockpick, like with his mouth. Was what I was expecting.
So there was no orchestra there for the orcs to distract them too?
Apparently not, no. And you've got one orc in the shot is looking like dead at them. Like he wasn't even like scratching his ass or something. You've got Adar off screen, who absolutely is going to be looking at them, because I mean, he has no reason to allow him to say goodbye to her anyway, but he does, so fuck it. But he's blind. And then he leaves behind 2 guards to make sure that Galadriel the like best soldier in the history of ever doesn't escape, and then she escapes, obviously, because Adar is unfortunately an idiot. He started out strong, but he does not go out strong.
Well, maybe since they know that orcs are really protective of their families, and he thought maybe a romantic kiss would make them think of their orc wives back at home who they're fighting for,
see themselves,
and that would distract them by making them think about their orc families who they love so much.
Maybe. And yeah, speaking of that, I do like the idea that Glug's little son, the Glugling, he's going to be back in season 3 looking for vengeance.
One of the issues here with this show, and Wheel of Time did the same thing, but we won't get into that too much. But it's these J.J. Abrams people, his disciples, that come in, and everything has to be a mystery. So every show they do now is about, well, for Wheel of Time, is who is the dragon reborn? Which one of these characters is it? Even though we all know who it is. So same thing with Rings of Power. It's who is Sauron? Who is Gandalf? And they have to waste time with all these characters, letting us know about who they are not, with red herring, instead of getting to know who the characters are. We know nothing about them except for, I guess that guy isn't Gandalf after all. And that's, Sauron is Halbrand, of course, but it's all red herrings with other characters. So we're not attached to anyone now. They are attaching us to who they're not. And it's a waste of time. And I don't think it gets the audience to buy in on these new people they've created.
Well, no, I mean, I have no idea what reaction the writers thought they would get from the audience when they finally revealed that Gandalf is Gandalf, because it's not a revelation. I mean, it's so far telegraphed.
Yeah.
And it's like the way it almost felt like they were working so hard just to avoid saying it when they should have done, which is right at the beginning, because at least in season 1, and we are now at the point where we can use season 1 as a positive counterexample, which is itself astounding. But at least in season 1, because you have multiple candidates for the main named roles, it sort of occasionally slightly works, because there is an alternative explanation. You know, if Halbrand isn't Sauron, then Steve could be Sauron, or Gandalf, sorry, could be Sauron. So like there's a degree of almost mystery that goes on there. But the minute you settle which of the characters is definitively Sauron, there is no point pretending like the audience doesn't already know who the other one is. And if you keep doing as they did with Gandalf's character, have him say Gandalf's lines or act in a Gandalfy way,
or be called Grand Elf
toward it, you start calling him Grand Elf. Like, what are you building up to? What is the point in this? Just tell us who he fucking is and find a better story to tell. But you just like season 2 is going to do the same thing with the other wizard at this point, because we still don't know who he is. He's almost certainly Saruman.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely going to do that in season 3, because he repeatedly just calls him old friend, like you say.
Yeah, every other line.
And like everyone knows. This is the thing, is what you were saying, Zax, is the show relies very, very heavily and focuses hard on things that people are going to recognize, which means that like the people who are going to recognize that aren't going to, they should not be the target audience for Rings of Power. They are going to be the people who dislike it the most, because they're going to be like, well, this is wrong, this doesn't make sense, why is that there? It's structured seemingly to just give them a little bit of like, oh, remind you of this, I'll remind you of this, I'll remind you of this, which is why we've had the name mystery twice now, like for 2 seasons. We're absolutely going to do it again for season 3, because we don't get Saruman's name in season 2.
Oh God,
we probably will.
They assured everybody that it's not Saruman, but that doesn't mean shit. There was like
the only
like, this is definitely not Saruman.
If it's not Saruman, the only other candidates is Radagast or the 2 blue wizards, because he basically confirms. Yeah, so if he is any of those 3, then that means that the writers are basically lying to us by having him say old friend, old friend, old friend. They're deliberately misdirecting us in a very, very obvious way, and then pulling the rug out from under us afterwards and be like, actually, it was Radagast. Like, that's not clever. That's just lying to your audience.
And every other time they've tried to misdirect us, it turns out to be the guy that we all thought it was from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, like, they don't have the subtlety to actually do a misdirect. And from their perspective, why would you do a misdirect in that sense? Like, if the blue wizards are not well known to anyone at all. In fact, I struggle to remember what they are called, except that they are called the Blue Wizards. If you get to the end of season 3 and the big reveal is, surprise, it's this guy that you've never heard of. Like, the writers won't see that as dramatically satisfying, and they won't gain from that. So I don't see them doing it. And every other time, as I say, they've done a misdirect, it's only been to try and delay the revelation that the character is exactly who we thought he was.
Yeah, well, and Zach's brought it up that Wheel of Time did the same thing, and it's such a time killer the entire show because they can't actually explore the main character. Wheel of Time never got a chance to get you to know Rand, who is the main character of the books, because they wanted to distract you. Ooh, it could be anyone. Yep. And I mean, we've said it multiple times, but it's like anybody who's read the books knows it's him, and anyone who doesn't, you need to fill them in on who these characters are. And so if you don't explain things because you figure, well, they've read the books, then I did read the books. I'm pissed at your changes. And then the people that didn't read the books are going like, what is, I had coworkers that didn't read them and they're like, I don't know what happened in that show. Like I watched a few episodes. I have no idea what's going on, who these people are, why they're following this, Rosamund Pike around. She's cool, but I don't know who anybody else is. So you're not serving either audience. And they think it's so clever to do this mystery when you would be better served to let us get to know these people.
Yep. 100%.
And to do that, I mean, actually having a story to tell with them, which is not just a meta narrative type thing, would be very, very helpful because across, I think it is 15 hours in total, isn't it? If you combine, no, it must be more than that. So like 16 hours now because we've had to complete, both seasons. 16 hours, you can reduce Gandalf's story to shows up, goes on mission, finds stick, and that's it. Like nothing else happens. He bumps into the hobbits, but they don't do anything either. They wander in one direction and they wander in a different direction, and we leave them wandering back in the direction they just came from. That's all that happens with them. Same thing is it's a similar problem with the Pelagius story arc as well. Isildur's entire season 2 story is rescued by horse, loses horse, finds horse, the end. And that's 8 hours of show. How do you have so little to do with any of these people?
Well, it's because they don't know how to write characters. And that is, I recently just watched season 1 of Arcane again, and I'm working on a video about it because I'm excited about season 2 coming out. And it's the contrast is incredible because Arcane is all about characters. There's really not, as far as plot goes, like Arcane doesn't have a crazy plot. I mean, I'm going to start that video out being like, don't worry about spoilers because what's there to spoil? It's pretty predictable plot, but that's not the important thing. It's the people. It's watching the people interact and their decisions affect each other. That's what really drives the plot. And Rings of Power is this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this, and there's music that makes this seem really important while this happens. That's the entire show. And you're right, you can sum everything up by just saying, well, they go from here to here, they find this, they go back. That's pretty much it. You don't care about the people. You could swap anybody out, and they did for Eddar. He doesn't act the same in the first couple of episodes of season 2 as he did in season 1, but it doesn't matter because all that matters is just him moving around and saying the lines and the things that are happening. And that's why nobody cares about the show.
I think the one thing they had to do with Gandalf, though, was to get him in somehow
I just
get
want
him
to bring
to a
up
place.
this super chat.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I just want to bring up the super chat because it's time sensitive. So
it's time sensitive. All right. Get my chat for a California $20. I'm off to see Joker 2. I want to see if it destroys its legacy and the characters as thoroughly as is it Polinick? Did I say that right? Did to he's the writer of Fight Club. I just never pronounced his name out loud, I don't think. Polinick did to Fight Club when he wrote Fight Club 2. That is in a way consistent with the punk themes of the first film.
Fight Club 2?
I did not know there was a Fight Club 2.
Yeah, there's
How do you pick up after Fight Club? What do you do? Where do you go from there?
So I was going to say about Gandalf that they admitted after the show in the post-show segments they did, they write backwards from these moments they want to have. And I feel like they wanted to have Gandalf being named by a Huxtable hobbit. And that's why they had to get him down to the southern area where there may be a hobbit there who can name him. And I think that's it. That'd be a cool scene. He's the Grandalf. I would not be shocked if they wrote to that point.
Did his heart glow when somebody said the name that was really truly his name? Is that how he knew?
Not even that. He sort of slowly half nods and goes, "Yeah," and that's it. It's wow.
There's dramatic music that's letting you know that it's
is it canon for Gandalf to get his stick the way he does?
But he just finds it after Saruman trashes the homes of some nut hobbits and
Yeah.
squishes them, and then he just
Also,
finds a stick in the wreckage. I don't think that's canon.
no, and also like the bomb
canon.
Bombadil way, where it was just like this rip off of Harry Potter, where he brings what is it called, like Gringotts or something, like where they get the wands.
Well, he actually uses the line. It's Ollivander's shop in Harry Potter. He actually
Ollivander,
uses
yeah,
the same
yeah,
line. The one chooses the wizard, basically, is what he says.
Yeah.
The way they turn
yeah.
him into fucking Yoda as well. Like, he is just Yoda, but
Yes.
more annoying because he speaks in riddles. So it's just.
But like the last thing that they do is that like Gandalf comes back from his mission and he's like, "Oh, it was all a test. I wasn't actually supposed to abandon my friends and let them die." And then Tom Bombadil turns around and he's like, "Yes, well done. Now let's sit down and sing a song about me." And that's the end. that's the end of their plot.
It's
Old
fake. It's
Tom
a fake
Bo- Yeah, but
news song
my
as well,
favorite
because
thing
the
about that
song
was-
lyrics are that Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow, bright blue his jacket was, and his boots were yellow, and he's singing it while he's not wearing a bright blue jacket or yellow boots. It's just like he's singing about like an alternate version of himself, I guess.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. I kind of wish
feel
that
like
they had gone
They
further
skipped
with
a huge
with
portion of
him.
that plot too.
I think they just wanted to say his name and do the song, just in the exact
Oh,
same
yeah.
way that they had Sauron announce "Lord of the Rings" really loudly from the furnace.
Yeah.
There's just
Oh,
certain
you can be
phrases
Lord
they
of the
need
Greg,
to
that
say out
that actually
loud.
happens again. That happens a second
Mm.
time.
Are you
in the-
kidding me?
Well, kind of. And I'll be honest, I don't hate it. Like, I hate everything around it. But the fact that they did it once, if you accept that, the way they do it the second time, I don't mind it. Because basically, Sauron gets really angry because Celebrimbor is being tortured, essentially, and he knows it's going to result in his death. But he provokes Sauron and gets him to kill him too early before he can, like, reveal what he was going to reveal. Which ends up not mattering because of Galadriel is an idiot. But anyway. And Celebrimbor says basically like, no, it is, what is it? You are Sauron, the Lord of the Rings, whereas previously he was told by Anatar that Celebrimbor can be the Lord of the Rings. So like the implications of his final line is he's flipping it back on him and saying, you haven't deceived me into being the Lord of the Rings. You have been deceived by the rings, is kind of what he's saying there, which it's still cringe as fuck because it relies on the first scene, but it's something. I had to draw something because, again, it's words coming out of an actor's mouth that I like, and I was trying hard to make it work, but I'm still not sure I managed it.
And then it has to lean way, even like you could say that's already leaning too far into it, but then it has to lean even further into it when it has Celebrimbor basically say, "You are a slave to the rings, Sauron, and I foresee that just one will be your undoing." It's like, so you're just foreshadowing the one ring, even though you have no idea that's coming. No one in the universe has any idea that's coming. It's not part of Sauron's plan at the moment, even. And Celebrimbor certainly doesn't know that's what's coming. So it's just a foreshadowing line, completely unsupported by anything around it.
Yeah.
But just on the point about it all falling apart then because Galadriel is a moron, just to put that in some context as well. Celebrimbor is trying to hold out because he gave the 9 rings that were made using Sauron's blood because reasons. He gave her the 9 rings so she can take them away to safety, so Sauron will never get them. So Celebrimbor is boldly, suffering and trying to drag it out in order that he, doesn't have to reveal to Sauron where the 9 rings are. Meanwhile, Galadriel is outside, and at the first sign of trouble, she says to the orcs, "I've got 9 rings you can have. Just let these people go." And then she gets taken to Adar, and then he goes good briefly, but then Glug seizes him, and then Sauron turns up, and then they have a fight, and then the rings just fall out of her pocket when he stabs her with his own hat, and then he gets the 9 rings after all. And that's the story of Rings of Power.
Yeah, that's the only reason why Sauron ends season 2 with the rings for men, which absolutely should not have happened, given what Celebrimbor's actions were, is because Galadriel basically just took them back to Sauron.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is a series that's supposed to be based on Tolkien's work, and in one episode they ripped off Empire Strikes Back and Braveheart. Like in the same episode. Like this is not, none of this is even original writing, really. It's just stealing pieces from other people.
Well, and in the Empire Strikes Back reference, they didn't even explain it. It was just, well,
No.
you have to stay to complete your training.
Right.
Why? Don't ask why. Those are the rules. In Empire, it was explained and it made sense, but in Rings of Power, it just didn't.
No. They just stole the line, said the thing.
Yeah.
Not every man really lives. Okay, right. You know, thanks.
Yeah, I love that they like just for the member berries, they'll have a character say a line that just makes that character like Gandalf's line later on, like, "Oh, you didn't even fucking come up with that on your own. You heard that from Tom Bombadil." Awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
I have
Just
returned.
for the member berries. Oh, hey.
Yeah, something was going on. All my audio was like way behind. Like I was saying things, and it was you guys were reacting to it like way late. So I was like, it's something on my end. I was like, that's why I was like, I'm just gonna restart.
Oh. I am outputting the 1080p from now on. Maybe that's.
I think it was just like my internet took a hiccup, and then for some reason it just never caught up on the StreamYard end. I don't know what that was about, but
what we were actually doing, we agreed this in private, is we were all deliberately waiting 10 seconds to respond to anything you said to make it seem like you were lagging. It was a cunning plan, and it came to fruition.
Yeah.
Well done, gents.
Did you want me to pull up some of the relevant supers?
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. There was one that was sitting on screen for a while.
Yeah, but then Platoon got on one of his really good, "Don't stop me now" rants, and I was like, I'll just get rid of it. Where was that one? I'll do that one first.
Yeah, go ahead.
That one was what the hell? They were all.
I
in
know who
order
it was
now.
From. Our good buddy TGV Monster, I believe.
Yeah, they're all in a different order now since I left.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, whatever. I'll just do it. We'll get to it eventually. Here's one.
Campbell Patterson for an ass, $5. I'm currently reading through the Lord of the Rings books for the first time. What do you think the movies did better than the books, and vice versa? Good question. The movies looked better.
There's no reading in the movies for the most part, so that's.
I would say the films are much more dramatically satisfying than the books, in the sense that the films are actually more dramatically conventional in their structure and in their style. And there's always a trade-off in sort of going for drama, because drama very often has to be weighed against substance. So like if you compare the endings for Return of the King in the film and Return of the King in the books, I would say the ending for Return of the King in the films is way more dramatically satisfying. It ends on a poignant high note. They all leave. It's like a moment of high emotion. And that is the natural way you would end a story. Tolkien broke with that usual sort of dramatic form in extending Return of the King out for the Scouring of the Shire, which is a much more important scene than I think is usually given credit for. And it's incredibly important, like symbolically, but also thematically, because the lesson that you're supposed to learn from that is that evil will never really be defeated. It's not all about defeating the final boss and sailing off into the sunset. There will always be other evils to replace it, which I think is a deeper story, a much deeper story than the one that Jackson was able to give us. So it's the trade-off between depth and I think dramatic satisfaction. The films are more dramatically satisfying. The books are just richer.
I can't seem to find the one. You said it was from TVG Monster? I remember what it said, so I'll try to do it from memory if you like.
I can try and find it too.
I would say the movie had less songs. Less songs.
Yeah, many fewer songs in the movies. That's true.
I wonder if I accidentally unstart it.
Was like I haven't read the books. I know the movies well, but I haven't read the books. Scale. So when you see the size of an army, it's a lot easier to kind of comprehend what that means versus seeing it written on a page. And the other thing from what I have heard is Boromir is generally considered to be superior in the films to the books.
I'll just pull up a different one for now because,
yeah, I think that's right. It's been so long since I've read the books, but I mean, Denethor is, I think, better in the books than in the films. He's like a slightly richer, more complex. So fucking Saruman, much better character in the films than in the books, because they give him more agency. Because in the books, from what I recall, like the whole pass over Caradhras is not implied to be Saruman's doing, and Saruman is much less of a proximate threat in the books, from what I remember. But by making him sort of the face of evil, which Jackson does, because it's very hard to show disembodied reaches of Sauron. Rings of Power tries it with like evil black lines on the map, and that's why it's difficult to do. So Jackson gives Saruman a lot more sort of immediate involvement and turns him, I think, into a much more proximate character, which is good. There's also like delivery of information and things like that, because in the book, almost the entire episode when they recruit the army of the dead is told back after the fact. You don't see it happen in the moment. You get to the end of Minas Tirith, and I think Legolas tells Pippin what happens way after it happened. It's like, oh yeah, and by the way, we went through the caverns and we recruited this army and we attacked the ships. Whereas obviously the films can show that in the moment, which is another example of being more dramatically satisfying than narratively dab.
One more here, I guess. While Cynic is looking for that platoon, you want to take this one? Can
do. Ton Lito for $5. I'm quite cross that all 19 rings are made in 2.5 months at best. Yes.
I found it, by the way.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, maybe I must have unstarted by accident.
Yeah, the creation of the rings being that quick is just insane. And because I think in the original source it takes like 500-600 years, whereas in this they just accelerate everything. And he's like, "Hello, I'm Anatar. So how about we make some rings?" Which it damages Celebrimbor as a character, and it also damages Anatar by having it take place that quickly. It's absurd.
I think maybe this is why Tolkien never really, they're like, oh, there's no real lore for the Second Age. That's why they can do what they want. And I think maybe that's why Tolkien really didn't cover a lot of this, because how do you tell a story where these get made that is a story? And now that I'm thinking more about it, they really could have done better to stretch this out if they didn't try to have all this happen in the same year of time. They could have shown Galadriel changing in character over the centuries by, season 1, here's some stuff that happens and maybe 1 or 2 rings or whatever, a couple rings get made. Then second season, we go forward 100 years or so. The landscape has changed. We're seeing some subtle ways the rings are affecting people or not. We're seeing different allegiances happen. So we get that first season interest of developing characters every season, because we're seeing brand new people, new humans at the very least, and we're seeing dwarves and elves get older, so we can justify character changes a little bit by time skips between seasons. But the fact they tried to condense it all down makes it seem pointless. And it's all so rushed with these artificial deadlines. Like in season 1, we got to get this this blacksmithy made. Why? Because we're all going to die in 6 months because a tree is dying. Wait, why is it? What happened? Well, it just is. So we got to find the silver metal. It's in the mountain. We got to do this.
Don't ask questions. Now. Just do.
Right.
I think part of the problem there, probably most of the problem, is that the writers are just nowhere near well enough equipped to handle a story of this magnitude, because the scope and scale of the story that Rings of Power is trying to tell is monumentally larger than the story of the Lord of the Rings. Because the Peter Jackson films do compress the time a bit, because there's like a 17-year time jump right at the start of Fellowship of the Ring, which they just didn't have in the film for pretty obvious reasons. But when Rings of Power tries to do the same thing, like you say, they basically just crunch everything to within one single human lifespan. And the reason for that is because they want to have a consistent cast of human characters like Elendil and Isildur from the start, because they're going to be very important when at the end of the Second Age. They basically didn't trust the audience to engage with a story where every character is an elf and where right at the end you're introduced to Elendil and Isildur.
Which is one of the many reasons that so many of these plot lines do feel so hollow and so pointless, because they want Isildur always there, but they have nothing for him to do. He won't be important to its story until season 5, if they get that far. So he's just tagging along for the ride. Whereas if you compare it with House of the Dragon does use time skips in season 1 in particular and uses them very well, but there's also a very different approach there, which is that it's not adapting all of Fire and Blood. They picked a specific event in Fire and Blood that they could flesh out in much more detail. They're still covering a very large span of time, but nothing compared to the overall story that's being told in the book, which isn't even the complete story anyway, because I think Martin's supposed to be working on the sequel for that as well at some point. So picking an event to focus on and then using time skips when necessary. I like the idea of a permanent cast of elves and a revolving cast of non-immortal characters. That could be really interesting. Having the confidence to wait until later to introduce people who are very important, but only introducing them where they are important and not introducing them well before they are important. All these different approaches that, with an ounce of imagination and a little bit of an appetite for risk, which I think has a lot to do with this, you could turn this show into something pretty good, I think. But they are so risk averse, they are so conventionally minded they've spent so much money on it, they didn't want to take any kind of risk narratively with time skips or anything like that, and it's turned it into a banal show whenever it's not just laughably bad.
I'm gonna read this just so I can finally get it off my screen. TGV Monster for $5. We have given this super chat a lot of fucking attention. Rings of Power ending is like bathroom after Taco Bell. It is a foul thing that lingers after it is released and takes much bleach to be free of its remains.
I'm actually glad that stayed on the screen for a while. That was
for a while. Yeah.
It lingered. It did.
Sure did.
As a meditation.
I think it was Random who just said it. That they, or it could have been Platoon, that said that they were afraid of having a cast that had no humans, and it was just elves and dwarves and orcs. Ironically enough, that actually was a fear of Tolkien himself, and he one of the reasons why humans are added into the story, or because he even says it in his letter that inevitably we as humans want to see that in the story. It's for a completely different reason, though. It's not because, oh, we invested $1 billion into this product and now we need to put humans in it because we put $1 billion into it. It was more of a connection thing in the greater scope of understanding the length of a life of an elf, because without having humans there as a basis for this is how long things are happening, it would have fallen apart.
It also helps for like grounding the more fantastical elements, because if there are no human characters at all, then it's very can we think of a movie where every character is a non-human, apart from, you know, something like The Lion King or whatever, because they're anthropomorphized animals. I'm thinking of like a movie where every character is just an alien on planet Zog. Like, does that exist?
No, they figure out ways to always get humans into those, whether it be they're just some random person who got stuck in a time warp, or sorry, like a black hole and got pulled over. They always figure out a way to get like at least one human in.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because even though obviously the humans in Tolkien's Middle Earth are not the same as us, there are obviously similarities, whereas the dwarves and the elves in particular, and I guess now the orcs we have to include because Rings of Power, they're all so very different that it is a lot harder to, I guess, relate to them, which is why it would make sense to introduce human factions like Rohan and Gondor.
Well, and they didn't have to nerf Numenor this bad either. And that could have been a bigger part of it, because they are sort of one of the most feared faction, and they absolutely suck on that show.
Yeah, I think Anatar, he may well be lying, but Anatar says to Celebrimbor, like, I fear Numenor. I fear what they could become. I fear what they could become. And you sat there like, why? They have 3 boats and like 500 idiots, most of whom are now dead. Yep. Like they haven't done anything. Yeah.
KJL291 for $20. We all know that Galadriel was nowhere near Eregion's fall, but do you know who was? Kella fucking Born.
Yeah, there's a beat in the Silmarillion where, because I think Galadriel, she goes over to Lorien through Moria, I think I'm right in saying, but Celeborn is such a massive anti-dwarven racist that he refuses to go through Khazad-dûm, so he takes the long way around just to avoid the dwarves, which is just fucking petty. But
I ain't going down that street. They live there.
A lot of history down that road.
Is that why he's not in Rings of Power? Because they didn't want to approach that topic.
I would not be shocked. Let's see what else we got here.
Internet Moron for 10 fake bucks. I'm still amazed all Gandalf has done in 2 seasons is figure out he's good and have his staff find him. Also, I struggle to think of a more impotent line than Galadriel's "heal yourself." Pathetic.
Oh,
and season 3, he will find his hat.
I found it amazing. Was I the only one who couldn't figure out where the hell they skipped a chunk of that story? He was in the Field of Sticks, and then all of a sudden he was in the Steward camp. And it's like I'm watching. I paused it. I went back to my old video. I was like, did I cover something that they skipped his whole journey go to find them?
So basically, what happens is that he knows where the Store Village is, even though how that happened is never explained. I guess it was probably another vision that we didn't see where it told him where to go. Honestly, that's the best we've got. But the other part of it that I think is even funnier is that Saruman, Dark Wizard, Rasputin, whatever we want to call him, he's there waiting for Gandalf to arrive, which he can't have known was going to happen.
Yeah, because they were searching for him. They had been searching for him and they couldn't find him. So how the hell would they know he was going there if you didn't know where he was? And if you did know where he was, you would have just went to where he was to begin with.
Exactly. It's complete nonsense, but it's that kind of shit is just all over season 2. It's ridiculous.
Pretty cool.
Zodlander for I don't know what that
Swedish
is.
Corona.
Swedish Corona for 100 of those. Tolkien fans versus Rings of Power. But they were all of them deceived, for another season was made. In the mind of the writers, another season was forged, and they poured all their cruelty and malice into it.
That was a good read.
Thank you.
I
Right.
don't think they have the brain power for cruelty or malice. I think they just poured all of their fucking mammoth incompetence onto the screen.
Well, they poured all of their J.J. Abrams training into it, and
Indeed. Yeah.
look at this pouch
this-
around this guy's
yeah.
neck. Don't you think that means something? Isn't that exciting?
Actually, you know what? Hold that thought, because I think there was a really good. I'll come back to this one. There was exactly what you just said. Where was it?
What's in this box? Don't you want to know?
Here you go.
Damn. Yeah. 0 for 10 Ronkins. I don't know.
I love Ron. That's my new
Ron.
favorite. Yeah, that's my new favorite currency is Ron. It doesn't even have a symbol. That's my favorite part about it. It's just Ron.
Bad Robot is a blight on entertainment.
True.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, okay, we'll go back to
100%.
the other one. Where was that one? Oh, here it is.
Jeremy Soden for 10 fake dollars also. Haven't seen it mentioned, but the significance of Adar's name is that it is Sindarin for father.
Yeah, I mean that's he has a line in the episode where, like, when he says, "I used to have a different name, but it doesn't matter." That's when he says that Adar is the name that I've earned, and that he calls himself the father of the orcs. He calls them all his children, and Galadriel's an idiot, so she sometimes takes him literally and threatens to murder his offspring and all that, as though he personally went around and fucked 10,000 orc women, which he might have done because he's old enough, but I don't think he did.
No, he's the Lord Father. That was they say it
Lord
multiple
Father.
times. It's like not literal.
Are you
Well,
telling
but
me that the Glugling is
she treats it literally quite often, like the torture scene in season 1, when she literally does. She pulls a knife, she puts it against her throat, and she says, "I will murder like all of your offspring in front of you." She uses the phrase offspring.
She's a moron. That's the best way to
Yes.
put it.
Chris throwing out his government name for just $4.99. Did you notice Elendil's scene before his imprisonment and his similarity to Ned Stark at the sept in front of his daughter? Since I don't know this stuff.
Yeah, this is when
Yeah.
Ned Stark's been imprisoned, and he has a few visitors, but this is the scene when Elendil's daughter goes to visit him, and she says that, please just let go of your pride, and we can be a whole family again, even though she already has a brother who's apparently still alive somewhere else. Yeah, I thought that was quite similarly done as well. It was just like, it was what Game of Thrones would be if it had maybe 1/100th of the brain power behind it.
Also, then all of a sudden now they're just like, and now we're Nazis and we're gonna hunt down everybody of a specific religion. That was one of my
suddenly crystal nacked. Yeah, it's great.
Jeremy Soden for 10 more fake bucks. Disagree about the Army of the Dead. The way J.R.R. Tolkien tells it adds suspense. Everything looks lost until Aragorn arrives unheralded at the last minute with unexpected spooky allies.
Look to the wherever direction I decide randomly. There will be ghosts. This is the most random. This is one of the more random numbers I've ever seen for a super chat. I like it.
Yeah, it's just about time for $27.99 worth of Californias. I tried reading Lord of the Rings back when the movies came out. I found the books very difficult to read and only understand what was going on because of the movies. Gave up on the Two Towers book because it was visual nonsense to me.
It's something the movies do help with, because I mean, the Tolkien is huge in description. Because you can actually look at the Lord of the Rings as not that complicated a story. It's not simplistic, but it's not a hugely there are only certain number of sort of character nuances and dynamics that go on there. like a huge amount of the read time for the books is taken up by description. There's a huge amount of that, and the films can be a tremendous aid because it gives you just basic reference points. So when he describes like the River Andu when you've seen it, so you can read the books with a bit more context. It takes a certain kind of, I find like you have to be in a certain mind to read books like that. It's almost like a meditative state you go into where like you don't have to pay too much attention to more important things you should really be doing with your time, like filing tax returns and shit.
There's some pretty good audio ones with Andy Serkis doing them.
Yeah. The audiobooks are good.
Yeah.
He's reading me the Silmarillion right now, and he's fabulous.
I guess Kick the Ladder just sent us $1 with nothing attached to it.
Fuck yeah. This man, a few words.
Bam.
Man of no words.
Miss Martin Muses for 99 cents and a super sticker.
It was a rose, by the way. I double checked that. It was a rose, so it was a super sticker.
I might be wrong. I might have just dreamed this. Didn't Christopher Lee read the Silmarillion, or did he just do parts of it? I'm sure I remember listening to Christopher Lee reading the Silmarillion, and it was like it was good, but it was Christopher Lee, and I was almost more distracted by the fact it was him doing it.
He started telling stories about how he killed people in wars and is a fencing champion, and he was just like, "Don't worry about what's going on here, just me." I don't remember that actually. I wasn't really, so I'm actually using this as a springboard to get more into Tolkien works. So that's one of the reasons why I know that Andy Serkis has audiobooks. So I'm not really sure.
I just quick Google search. Apparently, Christopher Lee never did the Silmarillion, but he did something called Children of Hurin or Hurin.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure what that is.
This one is pseudo related, not quite, but it's one of our regulars. So I'll.
Platoon, you want to read that one?
Toivo Korhonen for €5. Have any of you watched Scalagrim on YouTube? He does videos on medieval weapons and fighting with them. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know if I'm thinking of the right person, so I'm not sure.
I think I've heard people mention him in my comments before. That I think we were talking about the fight scenes, and you guys were talking about how shit they were.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I saw that one pop up.
I definitely know the name. I can't say that I know his videos though.
I'm going to do his next one to Toivo, this person, because he sent a nice big chunky one here.
Oh yeah.
Toivo Korhonen for €50. Thank you very much, sir. Hey, BSUP, you have these 3 actors and these 3 roles. You do the casting. The actors can be of any age. The actors are Nicolas Cage, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Ryan Gosling. The roles are Batman, next Bond villain, main character in Glup Shito, a Star Wars story.
Do we?
There's only
do we
one
have
answer,
to use
surely.
all of them?
I was going to say
Nicolas Cage.
Nick
yes.
can do all of them.
Nicolas Cage is a Bond villain. That's a given.
Yes.
Oh,
that's a good one.
Which then means you're left with Ryan Gosling as Batman because it can't be Gwyneth Paltrow, which then means Gwyneth Paltrow is going to play Glup Shito in Star Wars.
Yes.
Like, is there any argument to the contrary?
Well, the argument to the contrary is that it's 2024 and we're overdue a female Batman. So,
well, no, because
Gwyneth
that would be Batwoman, surely. Or are we allowed to change that?
I think we're allowed to change it.
Well,
like,
that woman is the suit will be better once it's made for a woman. Just remember that. Never forget that line.
Oh my god, that line is so fucking.
I
good.
love to this day. I love that they are implying that being Batman is down to his suit. Like it's like Iron Man. It's down to the suit. It had nothing to do with the traveling the world, learning a bunch of martial arts and languages, and becoming the best detective. It had nothing to do with any of the countless hours he put in. It was all in the suit, baby.
Intent matters for 10 fake bucks. Can someone explain the mechanics of the time illusion Sauron did to Celebrimbor? Were the 9 rings physically created over weeks, as Celebrimbor seems to think, or over a single night?
Fuck knows. Absolutely no idea.
I'm more interested in wondering how the hell he didn't get like trip over any of the debris or get hit in the head or anything.
Yeah, that's
like,
still
that didn't
there.
make any sense. That was the bigger question.
So I kind of went through it in my video on episode 7, which is long. It's nearly 2 hours long, but I think I worked out how to make it work. Both options are just as dumb as each other. The short version, I guess, is that either he made it in a couple of weeks and Adar was bombarding the city for a few weeks and no one stopped him and the Elven army didn't arrive during those few weeks, That's possible, but that's insane.
That
Or
requires that they actually use the real time that it would take to travel,
Yes.
but they hadn't been using that up to this point.
Yes. Or alternatively, Sauron made like a little pocket dimension kind of using Inception rules where inside Celebrimbor's mind and inside the Forge at the same time, time is passing at a slower rate, which means that he has time to actually craft the rings. It can't just be an illusion, because if it was just an illusion, then he has somehow made them using a broken forge. So the only explanation is that Sauron has transported Celebrimbor's consciousness into a pocket dimension with a functioning forge so that he can make rings with goo. That is the only explanation.
Yeah, that was another thing I point out in my video. It's I don't care how good an illusion is. If you're holding a liquid, you're going to feel the difference between a liquid and a solid. It doesn't matter how you. I don't care how good the illusion is.
And that's so world-breakingly powerful. If Sauron can create pocket dimensions where time functions differently, why can't he just make one for himself and do everything he wants to do in a fraction of the real-world time?
Yes, he could replace Celebrimbor.
He could make a new Celebrimbor. He could forge one.
Make a new Celebrimbor with blackjack and hookers. That's what we're gonna do.
Ruddy for 2 fake bucks. Why the shades? Are you having an eyes wide shut party? We're having a fucking Diddy freak off.
Yeah, baby.
It's the funeral, by the way, for the show.
Yeah, it's the funeral for season 2, and also the other topic that we're going to talk about.
I mean, I might as well. We don't have that many supers, so I guess let's just let's plow through those.
Ruddy for 2 more bucks. Paltrow is Bond villain. Miss Kendall Barge.
I'll save that one for the last one.
That's pretty good.
Steamy Lips. That's going to be her villain name. Should be a Bond girl.
I feel like I've read this out loud before and always pass this one off to Platoon. I don't know. Isn't it Lieutenant Corporal?
Yeah, it's LA. Lieutenant Corporal anime guy. I think. Yeah, that's what that's supposed to be.
LA or anime guy for $2. Hey, little Platoon, did you get Maulers plus company into Gundam yet, son?
He's I am here. Okay. No is the answer to that question.
Good luck getting Mauler into anything. He's a very busy man. if you, it's hard to get him into be like, hey, watch this.
Drake Timbershaft for $2. If only Sauron had a TARDIS. Boxbot Scoop for $2. Evil fire, cold the forge is evil. It frees goop.
I guess he chilled the evil goo, and it kind of had the properties of myth. The thing is, as soon as we start thinking about it, we've just got to say, well, Sauron made it happen. Like there's so much of the plot that you just have to say.
I mean, why does he even need an army anyway? If he could just make the soldiers turn to each other and stab themselves, like what's the point of having an army?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He does what he needs to so that they can have their battle.
Mm-hmm.
Melvin Deeply, our good friend, for $2. Once upon a time in Hollywood is Shitus Maximus. Indeed, every week. We're not
talking about Penguin this week, but here's a Penguin-based one for you.
Stephen Delian for $2. I can fix Sophia Falcone. Yes, sir. I think I've seen this many a time. I think many men think this. Arrow 734 for $10. Was Sauron's inability to make the rings an allusion to the fact evil cannot create beauty, or am I giving the writers too much credit?
Yes,
you are, because I don't think that the rings for men were ever intended to be quote unquote beautiful. I don't think that works.
Tay for $5. Hi panel, how's everyone doing? Off topic but cynic, did you catch Bad Blood? I was at Bad Blood.
What is Bad Blood?
It's a wrestling pay-per-view.
Outstanding song by Taylor Swift. Really catchy.
And I saved this one, even though it was like one of the first to come through, because it is a great transition.
Mega Spidey Man for $2 fake. Do you guys think Joker is still worth watching? Well,
the first one?
Funny you ask.
Yes.
Yeah, the first movie, probably a yes. I hesitate to say that as not a huge fan of the first one. And even after this movie took that one out behind the shed and gang raped it, much like happens to Joker himself. So this is the next topic here, and another reason why we're wearing shades today. It's a funeral for this franchise. This one is dead, baby. This movie was straight ass. Who on the panel has seen it besides me? I forget. Greg.
I gotta get in here more. There we go.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
I finally figured out how to. I figured out how to watch it. I watched it in Switzerland.
Damn.
Well,
Well,
neutral of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to sort that out because it was you know what was crazy. So I had not seen the first Joker, and I'd heard really good things about it, and it was one of those things that I felt like I missed out, and I never made a priority to go see. You know, people recommend things to you, and you're like, yeah, I'll get to it, whatever. And I never did. So I watched Joker 2, and with no knowledge of what had come before it, other than just general pop culture, and I liked what they were. I think what they were trying to do with some of it, like there were elements that I thought were interesting, and then it went nowhere and it fell apart completely at the end. And then I watched the first Joker after and saw like I didn't enjoy the second movie by the end of it, and then I watched the first movie after, and I realized just how badly they had screwed it up afterward. It was shocking. Do you want to spoil it? Because nobody's gonna go see it.
Like it's been out for the weekend. We did spoiler talk on Thursday anyway on Open Bar, so like we can do it here. It's Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and there's really the only thing really to spoil is the last 2 minutes, which just 100% undoes both movies. It makes everything pointless.
Yep.
And other than that, there's really not a lot of spoiler to it. So
yeah, what you see in the trailer is what you get until you get to the ending. I mean, at the end of the first movie, I just felt like he had become actualized, and they, I talked about it minimally in my review, but like they really do just completely regress the character to the point where he's back to the start where he was at the beginning of the first film. And then to top it off, he, like, you could argue that the point of this movie was to show how fragile it is of celebrity and things like that, because Harley only loved him but for the Joker and didn't love Arthur. So at the end of the film, after he decides that he's only Arthur and he isn't Joker, it's Joker's like being argued as another personality throughout the entire film.
As a legal defense, because most of the movie is, well, not most, but part of the movie is in a courtroom because he's now on trial for the murders from the first movie.
And which they constantly remind you of as if you hadn't seen the first movie.
Yeah.
As if anyone watching this hasn't seen the first film. But at the end of the movie, this is the Arthur Fleck that you get. He decides that he is not Joker, and then Harley breaks up with him, and then he gets gang raped by guards that get no comeuppance themselves, by the way, at all. And then he's stabbed to death by who will, it's going to be the real Joker. Like that's the point. He carves a smile into his face, and
and it was a character that you don't even. He
lingered in the background throughout the entire film.
Was it the guy that was dancing on the table with him, like the guy that sort of like was supporting him, and
I thought it was going to be that guy who ends up getting murdered.
That's why. So I thought he died.
Yeah, and it was a different guy.
So the guard choked that guy out, right, and killed him.
Yeah,
because they get back from the bathroom after doing what they did to the Joker, and they throw him in the cell, and then the other guy starts getting rowdy because he's now Joker's bestie, and they choke him off screen, like you just hear the audio, and they accidentally kill him. So I thought it was him, So I still don't know who the guy was that stabbed him at the end.
It's just some
Because
random guy that they kept cutting to.
yeah, he has zero setup. I don't even know that he has any lines. I didn't recognize him. And he was just sort of a nondescript, medium height, medium build white guy. And I thought it was that other guy that was his buddy. Because it was like, I believe in you. Oh, you're really changing things. And then at the end of the movie, he admits, like, I'm not, there's no split personality. I'm just a sad sack piece of crap. I'm just depressed. And I want to die. I'm not really the Joker or whatever. And I thought that guy felt betrayed and stabbed him. But then I thought, no,
that would
he
make
died.
sense, but he's
So
dead.
it's not him. So I was lost.
So a person that actually could have had an arc, they cut off for no reason, because all it does is make the guards who already look horrible just extra horrible for like no particular reason.
Yeah. It was very strange.
Yeah, it's the most beautiful looking pathetic piece of shit of the year. Like, it is pathetically written. There's a reason why it is across the board hated. It received a D cinema score, which is absolutely unfathomable. Like, not even the Marvels has gotten that, and I bet She-Hulk wouldn't even have gotten that. Not to say it's worse than She-Hulk. I don't want to go that far. I'm not trying to get super hyperbolic, but it's pretty bad. And the more I've thought about it, especially as I was writing the review and then having to talk about it on the stream, and as the weekend's gone, I've soured on it even more. I was giving it a free pass in the, it's a well-made movie. It's technically very proficient in like every field but the writing. But that's just, I don't know. We say that all kinds of things look nice in cinema. Like, those are things that a lot of movies just have down. You don't need especially you don't need a $200 million budget to have a beautiful looking movie. I mean, like A24 as a studio shows you beautiful films all the time, and they don't cost jack shit compared to this. So the more you think about it, it's just the more pathetic it actually is.
So it's 200 million. I didn't even look up the price.
Yeah, $200 million budget.
That's
I'm amazed that it costs that much. That's absurd. That's getting up to like Marvel and Star Wars numbers. That's
absolutely ridiculous.
There's no effects. Like, you can't blame the VFX team or any of that. The green screen shooting. It was really not a lot of actors. It was all pretty simple sets. It did look good, and you're right. It's well made. The cinematography was something that really stood out to me. I really liked there was a lot of creative camera angles that really drummed up the drama, or they were just creative in general. Like, they were filming the courtroom in the movie. The court is being filmed and broadcast on television. So sometimes the shots would just be through the camera, especially when Joker was feeling like a star, like he was the center of attention. So they wouldn't film the courtroom. They would film the camera filming the courtroom to sort of show that was how he felt. And it really illustrated a lot of, of what was going on in the scene. So really cool cinematography, really, the coloring was interesting. One thing that stood out to me that I didn't like at first, and I can see where they were going, is that the singing was terrible while they were in reality with each other. And then as it progressed into a fantasy in Arthur's mind, the singing suddenly got better. And so I thought that was interesting that they sort of went with that. Like, he can't carry a tune at all. And then when they cut away to whatever fantasy he's having, he sings great. Lady Gaga suddenly is singing great where she wasn't before. So they did cool things. And it looked nice, and it was very dramatic looking. And the idea, like you said, the idea of stardom not being everything it's made out to be, or he doesn't really want to be this anti-hero. He doesn't want to be this revolutionary sort of thing. That's an interesting idea to explore, but
it's not where we left him, though. It's not even where we left him.
Right. Yeah, they didn't have enough of an idea to explore for 2 hours. It didn't really pick up. You're absolutely right. It didn't really pick up on the end of the first movie. And
no, not at all, because like
he's leaving around for a while.
Yeah, and because at the end of the first movie, even though he's in Arkham, he is actualized. Like, he is the Joker now. Like, there's a reason why it ends with him saying, like, you wouldn't get it. And then as he's walking out there, you don't know if it's fantasy or not, but he has blood on his shoes, and it's like, oh fuck, he's, he might not be the clown prince of crime Joker, but he's he's getting there. But in this, it starts right back as if he's just Arthur Fleck at the beginning of Joker 1.
Well, and that's the thing, is they don't really tell you how much time has passed. And it doesn't seem like that much because his trial hasn't happened, or his trial's about to happen. And so it seems like maybe a year or two while they put together the case and they test him to see if he's sane. And you're absolutely right. He walks out, and I think that was a fantasy because they say that he killed 6 people over and over again in this show. The 5 that everyone knows about, and his hey, you gotta warn me before you walk across, dude. You're fine. Just so they constantly tell you he killed. They know he killed 5 people, and he admits he killed his mom. So the that end was a bit of a fantasy, but you're right. They did not. They make him seem sad and beat down at the beginning of this movie, when at the end of the last movie he seems very proud of himself and excited that the city is it's this whole it's this revolution that he started.
Right.
And in the movie, it really makes it seem like he doesn't want it, and Harley Quinn is pushing him and manipulating him to be crazy, to be what she wants. And so he doesn't even seem to want to be the Joker throughout this entire movie. And in the end, he actually gives up. It's very strange.
Yeah, I know, because it seemed like he loved being the Joker at the end of the Joker. I mean, when he was standing on that car hood and takes his own blood and smears it across his face, it was so symbolic. And in this, it's not only is he not the Joker, but it's his shadow self. You know, it's something else. It's something more. It's not just a thing that is buying his defense. Like he's kind of buying into it as well. And I'm like, where the fuck did this even come from? Like,
Yeah.
This is not even where we left this character off. And besides that, they don't do anything interesting with it. They constantly retread same ground over and over. They keep showing you flashbacks to the first movie for some fucking reason. And it's probably because the first movie is actually better than this by a long shot. And they just keep reminding you. And this movie looks more beautiful. The cinematographer really nailed it, but they don't have the iconic imagery the same as the first one. So they just show you that iconic imagery again from the first movie repeatedly. When he's dancing in the bathroom, the stairs, when he's first coming out on Murray's show, those really iconic classic images of him dancing. And speaking of that too, like I do see the through line with the music from the first movie to this one because of the fact that music played such an integral role in the first film, but it was in the background, like the character might have been listening to it on the radio, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And that was their direction to try and get it to be a musical for this, but the musical aspect did not add anything. It just made it worse. It would still be a not good film without the musical aspects of it, but what a fucking mistake, because this movie's directed by someone that's never made a musical clearly. And so like how to actually integrate it, they have no clue clearly, because the music constantly, it doesn't push this is the excuse they tried to use, was that it's like it's not a musical because the music doesn't push the narrative forward. It's like, yeah, you're actually kind of right, because it's absolutely pointless being in here most of the time. It adds nothing except an excuse to be different, and different's nice, but it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just drags on too long. So a lot of the musical scenes would have been interesting. Like in the first movie, you've got the fantasy of him on the Murray show, and he's hugging Murray, and that's about 90 seconds of his little fantasy of meeting his hero, and then and it snaps back. You're like, oh, okay, that was a fantasy that he's having. He's clearly disturbed. And in this one, there are multiple times where it's hard to tell if it's really happening, or some of them, like the Sonny and Cher, spoof that they were doing, that was obviously fantasy. But then him singing in the asylum around the other people, it's hard. They're cheering him on, so it's hard to tell if that's real or not. And they go on for quite some time. They really drag these numbers out. And you're right, they don't really add anything. There's no lyrics that you need to follow to know what's going on. So it just feels very. It's just kind of pretentious, honestly. Like,
oh,
we just
absolutely,
do it because it just seems neat.
Yeah,
and
absolutely pretentious. I mean, look at the title of the fucking movie. Like,
yeah, right. But it seems like they could have gone multiple interesting ways. Let's further examine the madness that is the Joker. Let's look at the aftermath of the things that he did. That's interesting. Let's look at the character of Harley Quinn. Why is she attracted to this inmate? it's revealed that she really sought him out because she's one of these women that wants to marry a felon. And it didn't actually explore any of those things. It was like Rings of Power, where it's this happens, then this happens, then this happens. There's no central theme. And then in the end, they pretty much say, these two movies don't matter.
Yep.
This guy isn't even the Joker. And
Yeah, go
they,
fuck
and they
yourself.
introduced like Two-Face was there at the end. I don't know if you saw that at the explosion in the courthouse.
Oh yeah, I laughed at that because it was so. I'm like, this character, the iteration of this character sucks. And
Yeah.
then it
So
just
they're
felt so
they're
goofy.
showing how these characters are. They introduce Harley Quinn, they introduce Two-Face. I didn't notice anybody else, but they might have been tucked in the background somewhere. So they're, you have Arkham Asylum that he's in for most of it. So they're setting up like a whole Batman universe.
Mhm.
And then they spent two movies showing you where Joker came from and then killed him right at the end. And then some rando in the background just cuts his mouth to get the Joker scars, and that's it. So it's why?
Because of the Brinks truck they backed up to Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix. That's why. I swear to God, someone's like, well,
I
this
would
is
think
the
that
only
has
way
to be the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I would think half the budget is paying those two. That's
Well, because
that's
they both
yeah.
said after the first
And-
Joker film that they didn't want to do a sequel, like it was a one and done.
right.
Does anyone like
Yeah.
obviously money, but like, does anyone have they spoken about why they decided to do the second one?
Not that I've read anywhere. Just that Todd Phillips said, "Well,
Money.
I have an idea," and his idea was just to be different by putting unnecessary musical elements into a film that was essentially a fucking epilogue to the first one. That could have
Yeah.
been 30 minutes long. And they
Well, 'cause
stretched
it
it out to
seems
almost 2.5
That's
hours.
the worst part, is that it's not 2 hours worth of idea. It should have shown the
No.
rise of him becoming, really entering into Joker, and he and Harley building this mountain that they're talking about and going on to be this evil power couple sort of thing. And they started to go that way and then built it and deconstructed it all in the same movie. It was goofy.
Before we carry on about Joker, Dark Hour, I know you have to leave, and Zach, I know you got to go too.
Yes, my last time having to do this. I will
Okay.
be going forward on Mondays. I have cleared. I no longer will be teaching people to break limbs and choke each other after this on Mondays. So, but yeah.
We're not doing that here.
Oh, well, I mean, we can if you like. I had considered, because sometimes when I do like two hoes, there's like people doing like chokes, and I'm like, this is incorrect. I've considered getting like a torso, like from like a mannequin, and showing people how to actually choke, like during that. But not sure how well that would go over.
I'm in.
You should get like a cardboard cutout of Galadriel from Rings of Power, so everyone can say this is like a toxic masculinity podcast that teaches people to fantasize about choking female characters to death.
There you go.
Put a wig on it.
But yeah, I guess I will see you all soon. Everybody out here I talked to relatively. Thank you, chat, and I'll be releasing my last Rings of Power video probably tomorrow. So
Word.
I will see you guys all then.
See you, dude.
See you later.
What is coming up for you, Zax? Have you got anything to plug?
Yeah, Wednesday, 9:00 Central. We're going to be talking about sequels and the good and the bad sequels based on this Joker 2 and how horrible it is and how much people hate it. And we'll get in. There are some good sequels, and there's some sequels that are better than the originals, arguably speaking. Getting dig into that on Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central on my channel at Zax. And tonight, much later, I'm going to be on Nadia's channel talking about the Penguin. So I'll put that here. And I love coming on this show. So thanks so much for having me back on again. It's been a minute, but I really appreciate it.
It's
Yeah, man.
always great to have you. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yep. Thanks for coming, man. I really appreciate it.
Good to meet you, Zach.
Enjoy
Yes,
talking Joker too.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you
we
guys.
shall. Yeah. Godspeed, sir. And then there were 4. And now half the panel's seen Joker. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard people say of this that it was almost deliberately sabotaging the first one because the first one got a large audience of people that nobody in the industry likes. So it was deliberately trying to undermine itself at the cost of several $100 million. Is that a believable line or not, having seen it?
Somewhat. I would say a little bit.
Yeah,
what do you
I
think?
could. Well, I could see Todd Phillips doing it, and then the studio just being absolute fucking buffoons and not realizing what they're doing by allowing it
Yeah.
to do it. I don't think they would intentionally lose money, but Todd Phillips gets his money no matter what, and he said he was done with DC after this. So he might have just like it seems like directors fucking hate Warner Brothers because the same thing happened with The Matrix Resurrections, that piece of shit. Like they made a movie because WB said they were going to make one with or without the Wachowskis. So she stepped in and made this abomination of a film, and it shit on the fans. It shit on her own movie. It shit on the movie studio. And it seemed like Todd Phillips basically did the exact same thing with this one. And maybe people just have a grudge against WB
I
because
do.
WB would be at fault because they did not screen test this movie.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
they didn't
and
screen test it at all.
I
From the
think they
sounds
would
of it,
have.
that wouldn't have helped.
They would have helped. Well, they would have heard some solid feedback.
They would have
I hate them
heard
because
some
they're-
feedback guaranteed.
Well,
they're
so
so
what I mean
stingy
is
with their
that
copyright shit. I can't use more than 5 seconds of any of their stuff without them getting all mad.
what I mean, sorry, is that like if they had like test screened it and it was like, oh, we don't like that, from the sounds of it, they would have to basically change the entire movie.
I think they could have reshot the last third, and they could have salvaged it, or really even just the last 20 minutes. I think they
yeah,
could have.
maybe don't have him get like, raped by guards
Yeah,
and murdered. And then it's like, there's your arc, guys.
I think they could have even left that in, and because right at the end he's about to be, he's found guilty, and just before they pronounce all the charges, they say like 2 of the charges he's guilty, and pretty much before the judge can have him taken away and pronounce sentencing and whatever, the courtroom building, the wall blows up, and you're thinking, oh, okay, Harley came back because she abandoned him because he said he wasn't the Joker. Oh, maybe she came back and she blew up the building, and they're going to escape together. And he escapes, and it's just kind of random. And then he finds her, and she pretty much says, nope, still hate you, and walks away.
Mhm.
And then he gets arrested and then stabbed to death. And that's all like the last 10 minutes. So they could have cut that, refilmed a very small portion where she meets him outside and says, yep, I'm the one that blew up the building. I came back for you. We're in love. Awesome. And he says, yeah, baby, I was wrong. I am the Joker. This is me now. There's not 2 personalities because it's all Joker all the time. And they go off together to be a villainous duo. And they could have ended it like that. And that's the origin story. And it would have been all right. It would have been long and a little boring.
I bet
and
it would have
retreading a
just
lot of
been
the
like,
first movie, but it would have
wow,
worked.
isn't that disappointing? If it ended that way, people might have been just disappointed, but not hate the film.
Like from the sounds of it, the idea of making a sequel to Joker that's a pretty bold idea because it comes across absolutely as a one and done movie. So the fact that this film even exists, I think lends a little bit of credibility to that theory that it was almost like a self-sabotage project, because also not only are you making a sequel to Joker, but you're making a musical with Lady Gaga. And you've got to think, what if you took a Venn diagram of fans of Joker and fans of like musicals with Lady Gaga, there's not going to be much in the way of overlap. So like that on its own is a very, very bold move.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if that were the case, if it was almost deliberately coming out to like shit on the first movie, then you don't spend $200 million on that movie. Like I don't know off the top of my head what the budget for the first one was, but 50, 60 million, something like that.
55 million, yeah, right in the middle there.
Like you can do that with that kind of money. Obviously, it's still a lot of money, but in Hollywood numbers, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And Platoon, I mean, to answer your question directly, I can see some of it because I watched the first one after, and I can see why there's a lot of guys out there that feel like Joker I think they took the wrong lesson from the movie of like, yeah, society screwed this guy, and he was totally justified. I feel like that's not the lesson you want to learn from that movie. Like he's still the villain. So the people that think Tyler Durden is the hero and that Joker is the hero and that Tommy Shelby is really cool, like I don't get those people. But you're right. That was a lot of the fan base was they watched it and they thought, hell yeah, he shot Murray and his speech at the end is totally justified. And some of it feels like this movie was saying, oh, that's what you think? Well, guess what? Now he's going to be in prison and he's a sad piece of shit who just he doesn't even talk for the first 10, 15 minutes. And he is absolutely horrible and sad. And this woman helps him to kind of get his motivation, and even that doesn't work. And in the end, he just sort of dies pathetically on the floor. So it does. It feels a little spiteful. I can see how people would read that.
Oh, interesting comment. You guys should see Phoenix and Gaga react to the film at Venice. They look super disappointed. Interesting. Yeah, I suppose they might not know exactly what you're going to get until you see the final edit. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
were there like hundreds of, because obviously films these days, reshoots and all the rest of it? Because I mean, you say it wasn't like focus grouped, but was it changed while in production, or was it like, this is the script, go, and then it's
So
done?
there was a lot of feedback that Phoenix and Phillips would change the script on the fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
okay, fair enough.
yeah.
For a movie like this, that sounds very strange, but okay.
Because they were making an art house film for $200 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be like the most expensive musical ever made. What else competes? Like nothing. You got La La Land, Mamma Mia, like all of that. Those are relatively cheap movies.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't follow the traditional trajectory of a musical. Like they basically are the only two that sing, except for like a time or two when there's kind of, they try and create a natural reason that everyone on the screen is singing. But I don't see how you can have singing throughout a film for the vast majority where the two main characters are singing and have it not be called a musical. It's pretty we're just playing semantics here. But
well, Francis Ford Coppola liked it. Apparently, he said that what's his name, Tophillips, is always ahead of the audience. The guy who made Megalopolis likes your film, so that bodes well.
What was that meme I sent you? It said this movie sucked, Megacoculus. That's about right.
I still haven't seen that. I'm still more interested in seeing that than I am in seeing Joker 2.
Oh,
but,
yeah, definitely.
They're both on my list of things.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I expect to like them, but I expect Megalopolis will make me more like, yeah, it'll make me think more than Joker 2 does. It just sounds like Joker 2 is
well,
kind of nihilistic about itself.
It is, and it's coming off the back of a movie that was pretty pretentious anyway. Maybe that's part of the problem for Todd Phillips. He didn't have another movie to rip off. They didn't make Taxi Driver 2, the musical. So he couldn't, go back and just follow the same plot beats as another film, and got lost up his own ass and came out with Joker Folie à Deux.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the Joker? We do have some super chats to get to. It is a shorter stream today, folks. Just FYI.
Is it the last superhero film of the year? Are there any others coming out?
Venom 3 comes out this month.
Oh, fucking Kraven the Hunter. Is that this year?
And Kraven in December, I believe.
Oh, joy.
Or November. I can't remember, but it is this year.
Kraven the Hunter is the next one that came after Morbius and Madam Web, right?
That was supposed to come out, and then it got delayed because of the strikes and stuff.
Okay. But we can expect something on the level of those two, I guess.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Because he's like, I'm not too into like the whole superhero thing. I've seen basically all of the popular ones, and some of them are quite good. But like, who the fuck is Kraven the Hunter?
Yeah, he's just a C tier. Well, if you're like a comic book person, you wouldn't say he's like a C tier villain, but he is. He's on the lower totem pole of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. That's about it.
Okay, so he's a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because like I'm kind of expecting now with like the Tom Holland Sony Spider-Man movies, if that ever ends up actually happening, they're going to be pulling in, I'm guessing, Morbius, Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, Venom, obviously.
God, can you imagine all that careful setup of characters they've done?
Because like, why else would you do that if you're Sony? You want to blast through setting up all of these other characters because they're already working with Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, who has already been set up in the Marvel movies. So I'm just kind of thinking maybe that's the reason why they're just blasting all of these out.
I bet they're doing it and hoping that the MCU, the people over there say, yes, you can do this crossover. Because they both have to agree to it.
My understanding was that that's no longer the case. I could be wrong, but I thought that now Tom Holland's Spider-Man is out of the MCU, and they wrote him out of the MCU during whatever the last film was called.
Oh, no, he's still in the MCU. He's
really?
Yeah. Yeah, they
Okay.
just don't know. People forgot that he is Peter Parker, but they know Spider-Man. So like all of Spider-Man's lore with the Avengers and you know the Infinity Stones, all of his adventures are still known worldwide in the MCU.
But Peter Parker, as in Tom Holland, doesn't physically exist within the MCU anymore.
Well,
'cause he's
he
in another dimension.
exists, but no one knows that he is Peter Parker. Like everyone forgot
Right.
who he is. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm guessing Sony is hoping to do is that whatever this other dimension is within the MCU is going to be the Sony universe. I'm so fucking sick of multiverse.
They'd still have to cross universes though to make it work.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're allowed to because they in Madame Web they went
Madame
out of
Web.
their way to not even say Peter Parker or
Yes.
Spider-Man. They
did.
never
Okay.
said those words. They were about to say his name was Peter, and then a balloon popped, and everyone was distracted. Like it was so weird that they can't mention the character. It's the Sony Spider-Man universe, and there's no Spider-Man. There's not even the name Spider-Man mentioned. It's the goofiest thing.
Yep, it's going to be fascinating if they do that actually cross over. The only thing that they did do was have Venom jump time or jump across whatever universes into the MCU for nothing. They dropped a piece of the symbiote in the MCU, and then he went back to the Sony verse. God, it's so convoluted and fucking ridiculous.
All of these universes are just crumbling under their own weight at this
Yeah,
point.
it's just,
like
God.
Secret Wars can't happen. So they really just need to shoot one real fast and just look, it's Secret Wars, everybody died. It's a reset. We're going to start making new ones again.
Yep. Sorry for the multiverse thing. Oops. That was a bad idea. There are people outside tending to the lawn and all that stuff. Sorry if you can hear that in my microphone.
What's up?
Oh, you can't hear it in my microphone? Good.
I heard like a slight beep of something, but
Oh, they're I don't know, they're blowing leaves around. It's very loud in my headset.
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. Then let me get to some super chats then, or the rest of the super chats. Unless there are anything you guys wanted to talk about or anything more on Joker 2 before we move on.
I just want to say Transformers 1 is fantastic.
Oh,
and I know we're not talking about it. It's a good movie. And I'm so tired of shitty movies and shows. And that was really, really good. And I'm so sad about how it's performing at the theater. And nobody even knows it's out. And it's really, really good. I think Dark Hour said it's really not great with the lore, which I didn't know there was Transformers lore. So that might be why I loved it so much, because apparently it breaks a lot of that. I didn't know it. So I just was there having a great time, seeing a fun robot animated movie, but I thought it was great. So if everybody's watching, you guys are tired of shitty movies and you want to see something good, you'll enjoy Transformers. Even as an adult, it's just a great movie. It was a good time.
I still also plan on seeing, but have heard great things about The Wild Robots.
Also good. Yeah.
That's the animated one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not in the like 10 out of 10 greatest thing DreamWorks has ever made camp. I'm not fully understanding that, but I think it's like a solid 7 or 8. It's very good. There are some great emotional parts. It's beautiful. All my kids loved it. It was a very good movie. And
it looks fantastic.
Non-kids, like non-children having adult, like you can just go see it. You'll enjoy it. That's a very good one as well.
And I'm also looking forward to, for the horror fanatics out there, Terrifier 3.
No.
Fuck yeah. It's gonna be a banger. I heard they are doing the typical horror movie marketing where they're like, during the initial screening, 9 people were vomiting and exited the theater. Fuck yeah.
They show you the night vision where the audience just
right, yeah. It wouldn't even be like that it's scary. It's just, if you can know about the Terrifier series, it's just over the top slasher gore, like absolutely over the fucking top. And I don't know how they're going to top themselves with what they did in part 2, but we'll see, I'm sure. But yeah, let's get to these super chats here. Spaceman for 2 fake bucks. I really like Joker 2. It's hardly a bad film. Well, we disagree. So.
Arrest him. Arrest him for that part.
TGV Monster for $2. Hi everyone, just got off work. Good seeing you. Good seeing you in the chat. Good sir.
You.
Thrill House for $5. Do any of you consider the recent media shite to be a psyop to erode the culture and demoralize those who desire magnificence in the West?
Probably apportions too much genius, I think, to the people behind it. There are always sort of cultural nihilists and cultural masochists, and there are people who will destroy very popular things because they think that they are clever. There's a big jump between that and we are consciously doing it to undermine people's self-perceptions about the greatness of the West. There might be a handful of people who have that in mind, but most of these people are just completely incompetent.
Yeah, if the options are incompetence or maliciousness, it's probably incompetence.
It's actually, I'm working on a whole script about this because I'm fascinated with the whole progression of these ideas, and it's I completely agree with you. I don't see any like mission. It's people that think postmodernism is really cool and clever, and then in the 90s identity politics began to be popular, so a lot of these folks got hired and now they're in positions of power and they're very selfish and narcissistic, and so you have a combination of studio heads that just think these clever sounding subversions are going to make money, and then you have people actually making them that genuinely either believe that everyone needs to know more about me writing this, or they genuinely believe that, you know, subverting your heroes is so cool and amazing and fresh and original. And yeah, you have all the crap. You have people in Hollywood just jerking each other off, telling each other how amazing they are, and this is what we get.
It can look like some evil, nefarious plan, and in quite a lot of cases, it can replicate all of the constituent parts of evil, nefarious plans, but without necessarily the intent behind it, because it's the way ideas filter through, particularly like academia, and then through academia into society. The number of like terrible ideas which you find pop up on Tumblr, which then like infiltrate college courses, but it turns out they only appear on Tumblr because a college course has taught it first. You might get a sociology course which tells like 100 people about the theories of Jacques Derrida or the economics of Karl Marx, and you'll get 20 people from that class of 100 who will really like a tenth of what they hear and remember it. And they take that forward as a kind of guiding assumption and presumption for the way they interact with the rest of the world. And that's how they then enact that teaching. It's not that they are all dyed-in-the-wool fans of Marx who can quote you every chapter and verse of Das Kapital to undermine capitalism. It's that they've taken away a set number of assumptions about things they half remember, and then they go away and take those assumptions and they apply those to things like, the masculine virtue is actually a patriarchal ideal, which like they half remember from a feminist lecture in social studies in like a shit university course. And then enough people do that enough of the bad ideas sort of filter through and start to congeal again. And then it gives you the impression that some nefarious genius is behind it all, orchestrating it. But you can't look at the people doing it. Like fucking Leslie Headland. You can't look at Leslie Headland and tell me this is a woman in complete command of her critical faculties. That's just not how it works. She has some bad assumptions that she's learned because she's not very clever. It's just that enough people like that are combining them, and then everything is falling apart.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, especially with Derrida. Like, and his writing is so convoluted, and it's written in such philosophies that you think you sound clever when you quote it, because it's just a bunch of buzzwords, or you know, and they'll quote. I just pulled this up from Kimberly Crenshaw, who is the first person to use intersectional, and that's where that term comes from. Her paper where she writes this is called "Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex: a Black Feminist Critique of Anti-Discrimination Doctrine, Feminist Theory, and Anti-Racist Politics." And when you regurgitate nonsense-sounding titles like that and talk about intersectional theories, you think you sound very smart, and then you get hired and you put these things on film, and that's what we get.
A catchy title, that.
Oh, it's a good read. You should go through that one.
TGV Monster for $5. My predictions for Rings of Power Season 3. Galadriel will go, "I'm a woman, here I come." And someone will call the Dark Wizard, "He sure is a sour man." Get it?
Yeah, that's about the writing quality I'd come to expect.
I
I
like
mean,
it.
yeah, the other one is the Rivendell is obviously just going to be, oh, it's a river and there's the dwell, they're in the river dwell. It's going to be Rivendell. Like they've basically set that one up.
Isn't the Suzat like just
Oh, the Suzat is the Shire. They don't use the word Shire, but
right? They don't use the word Shire, but isn't Suzat like I don't know what language it is, but it essentially means Shire. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know what the word means, but the description that they give is the Shire. So yeah.
Richard Shaft, member for 14 months. The wait is almost as boring as Joker 2. Maybe that was in reference to us waiting for us to come on the goddamn screen.
Probably.
Life of 5 for $9.99. Heal Yourself was stolen from Jesus. Speaking of, though maybe not a big overlap in audience, The Chosen adapts another much beloved canon that gets much better respect from the filmmakers. Not heard of
I still haven't seen The Chosen, and everybody recommends it to me, and it's another one that I want to get into, and I haven't. And now
someone has
3
recommended
seasons
this to me
late.
as well.
I did recently watch Bonhoeffer from Angel Studios, and that was very good. I enjoyed that one very much, but that's a real. That's gonna be a small audience.
The Chosen's from Angel Studios, is it?
I believe it is, right?
Yeah. I watched The Shift. That was okay.
Yeah, that was a. There were things I liked about it, and then there was some stuff that was a little on the nose, and they were trying to tell a dystopian Job story, and I feel like they were trying to do 5 different things, and if they had settled on 2, maybe it would have been really good. And the guy that plays Satan in that one is fabulous.
Yeah, he's fucking awesome. That was like the reason to watch that movie for sure.
It fell apart in a few areas, but overall, I like the stuff that they're doing. I've liked what I've seen from that studio.
Yeah, they're like the religious A24. Rock on.
Yeah, they're trying to improve the quality from the Kirk Cameron days, and they also have capitalist propaganda in the form of the Tuttle Twins show, which my kids are glued to. Like, it's actually entertaining. The kids really enjoy it, and then they also love capitalism, so it's a win-win.
Intent matters for $5 fake. I love the part when Gladriel said the door is shut. This is not a meme. This is a direct quote.
And that's not that part is great. It's not the best part. I don't think it's quite as good as when she says heal yourself, but it's up there.
Eboda Emmanuel for $5 fake. I personally feel that Shadow Mordor did a better job being faithful to Lord of the Rings than Rings of Power.
It gave us a sexier Shelob, to be sure, unless you are really into actual spiders. But like, it's very hard not to do a better job than Rings of Power at being faithful to the Lord of the Rings. But I have never actually played Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor, I thought, was good enough to play through to the end. Like the lore is nonsense. If you're looking for anything coherent there, it's nonsense. It's just set in Mordor. But mechanically, it's interesting enough. Like it's a good game from a mechanical perspective. Unfortunately, I did not have the same experience with the second one. I basically got thoroughly bored after about 2 hours, and I haven't gone back to it.
That's another reason I don't like WB is they patented the system.
Oh, the Nemesis system.
Nemesis system, yeah.
God, that company sucks.
And then they've just not done anything with it. It was in 2 games. That's it.
Yeah.
Michael Turpia for an ass $5. If they had the rights to the Silmarillion, do you think that Charles Vickers could have still played Sauron Anatar?
Yeah, well, I mean, Sauron's a shapeshifter. I mean, anyone could play a version of him. You didn't actually have to have the same actor playing all of the various different like versions of Sauron. I don't think he's pretty enough to be Anatar. Galadriel agrees with me because she doesn't have the hots for Anatar. It's when he transforms back into Halbrand. She really digs brunettes, and then like she goes to try and kill him, and he becomes like well put together Halbrand with his nice wavy hair, and she stops. So evidently she thinks that he's right for the role. I'm not entirely sure I agree. He's talented. I think if you're changing one thing, just change the whole thing. Change the cast. Change everything.
Just start completely over.
Lieutenant Corporal Anime Guy for $5. Azure Lane is a story about female characters based off of World War II ships that fight aliens, and it's honestly better written for a gacha game compared to this.
When you say based off of World War II ships, do you mean that they live on them, or that they're like World War II ships as women?
I think I've heard of this. Hold on.
Because it's anime,
Yeah,
so
they're
it's different
they're
anyway,
World
isn't
War II ships as women. There was something else like this where they were tanks. It was like it was like a bunch of tanks were at college or something, and yeah.
it? So is
Yeah.
the Bismarck some fucking sexy school teacher or something?
I mean, I can't really share an image, but I'll copy. No, I can't share an image really. But yeah, if you just go on Google Images and look it up, and it's pretty much why I don't watch anime.
Wait, what was it called again? It was
Azure Lane,
Azure Lane.
AZUR, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I expected to. Bill Skerner 3124 for $5. I probably botched that. Bill Skerner. They want Adar to be tragic, but if he really is the father of the orcs, then he's just evil, since it implies that he was Morgoth's torturer.
Does it? I mean, the show has it that he was tortured by Morgoth, because he gives that story about like wasn't he on top of a mountain, and then he was being
Yes.
tortured, and Sauron offered him some wine and he drank it all. Really compelling
yes.
stuff.
Yeah, I do. His relationship with Morgoth, I don't really think there's enough that we can read into. Not that it would be a rewarding exercise to try and read into it. I think that Adar, as he finishes season 2, is just a complete mess of a character. Whereas at the end of season 1, there was at least there was something there that they could have done something with, but this is Rings of Power. They don't do that.
M8566 for $2 says, women like a man with a body count.
Is that in reference to Anatar or Halbrand, I guess?
I think that was a Joker too.
Oh, Joker, yeah, of course.
Oh, yes.
Harley liking him because he's got
numbers.
bodies.
The man's got numbers. 0 for a Ronkin 25. I like just making up currency.
What country is the currency of Ronkin for?
From that show about when the nuclear power plant in Russia melted down, and they kept saying Ronkins. And every time I've ever seen wrong sense, all I can think is Ronkin. That's why, because of my ADHD. That's where it's from.
25 Chernobylian Ronkins.
That's right. The real story of Joker 2 is probably behind closed doors, indeed. Where Todd Phillips, they just didn't screen the movie, so they clearly just didn't give a fuck about getting feedback. They just said, no, we're definitely going to make money no matter what, so just go make your movie. And if this is what we have to give you so that you make another one, we'll just do it.
Sometimes I think they just figure that brand recognition is going to sell tickets. Like I think that's a big part of it right now. Is they're just like, hey fellow kids, we heard you liked the Joker and we made another one, so here's the slop in the trough, eat it up, you fuckers. And then people don't, and they're all shocked, and then they want to insult the audience. We're in a weird timeline.
It's like they didn't know that the director and writer didn't like the audience. Oopsie. Zodlander for I forget that one again, for 50 of them. Will any of you review Snyder's Twilight of the Gods? I watched 10 minutes of it and it left me thinking, is Snyder worth the viewer's time? Oh God, no.
I haven't seen it, and the answer to that question is no.
Definitive no.
Yeah,
no.
If I didn't have other things that I'm working on for the next few months, then yes, I would consider watching it, because I do find Zack Snyder intriguing in his ineptitude, because every now and then he'll have a good idea but just do it really badly. But honestly, after Rings of Power, I need a little bit of a break, so if I do it, it's not going to be for a little while.
A couple more here.
Let me go back and review Sucker Punch.
All right.
No, we're not talking
Common
about-
people for 569. There's a nasty rumor going around that Cynic doesn't have feet. Can you show them? Just to prove these animals wrong. It's totally not for me.
I mean, with that profile picture, how can you say no, Cynic?
You did pay, but there's a super chat here, not for feet pics. Tisk tisk.
It's gonna take
I actually
more.
don't have them. Look, that's
Look,
that's
he
where I
literally has no
start.
feet.
Just a knee.
Yep, just the
It's
knee.
Tragic accident.
It was a farming accident. Don't mind him. Not Brian for 10 fake bucks. 10 English pounds. 10 fake dollars for Ploots to say in his finest ASMR voice. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is great. Melvin Deeply can suck it.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is great. Melvin Deeply can suck it.
I mean, that's pretty good.
I don't really know what a good ASMR voice is, though. I only have one voice, so it's just the voice I use.
Oh my god. Yeah, well, those are all the super chats for today. So I'll go around and thank all 2 of our remaining guests. Greg, thanks for hopping on the show, dude. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me back. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. What are you up to next so that our audience can hear?
Tomorrow night, come on over to the Echo Chamberlain channel where we'll be doing the Echo Chamberlain live show, which we like to call the Echo Chamber, but he doesn't. That'll be at 5 p.m. Central, I believe. And then for me, whenever I can get something written and edited, then there will be another video up. But who knows when that's going to be?
Well. All right. Yeah, we always appreciate Greg's commentary, and Echo Chamberlain's show is really good. So
Yeah.
You guys might find your way over there tomorrow.
I think I'm on tomorrow.
Oh, then you definitely will have to find your
I
way
think
over
he said
there.
it's tomorrow. Yeah. I will see you there, Greg.
I never know who's going to be on until I show up. It's really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing you there tomorrow.
Look, he's smiling. God. Random Film Talk, thanks for hopping on the show, man.
Yes, thank you for the invite, as always.
Yes, absolutely. And no, we appreciate you coming on and providing your commentary. What are you up to next, good sir?
I'm well into the process of working on my 8th Rings of Power video for the finale. It is going to be the longest one so far. I did the recording today and unedited. It's by far the longest, but obviously that gets trimmed down. I would expect it in about a week. And I mean, I kind of can't delay it any longer than that because I'm going on holiday at the end of that week. So it needs to be done by then. After that, I have my final video on Arcane coming out, which I'm going to release while I'm on holiday. And then after that, final autopsy video of Rings of Power will be coming afterwards.
Yeah, and Random Film Talks, I'm sure our audience knows your videos are spectacular. So looking forward to those, man.
Thank you.
And that does wrap it up for today. Unless Platoon, you want to mention what you're up to next? I always, forget about us, kind of.
Yeah, it's just Rings of Power forever and ever and ever. At least another 100 years of Rings of Power. Should be hopefully finishing the season 1 finishing video is like basically done. So the vague plan was to get that out yesterday, which didn't happen. And now it's tomorrow, which probably won't happen. So maybe Wednesday, and then hopefully something on season 2 this coming weekend. And I don't know how that's going to work. There'll just be some Rings of Power shit at some point.
I'm calling Sunday. That's when you'll release it.
Okay. We will see.
All right. I think that gives you a lot of room too to beat those odds.
I'm actually away this weekend, so I'd have to get it. Fuck. No. Oh God. Okay, maybe not. At some point, videos.
God. I'm also releasing a final Rings of Power video to cover the last few episodes that I haven't covered, and I've been doing it in pretty particular and fun way. I'm scripting as I go and kind of going against the grain of how I usually do it, and it's provided some entertaining content. So if you guys have been watching, that final video will be out to wrap up that series and hopefully continuing humorous fashion. And yeah, that does it for the stream, guys. Appreciate everyone who stuck around, who sent in super chats, who's still watching. As always, you guys absolutely fucking rule. And we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.